Chapter 420. That night, after Mo Ting returned home, Tongning dragged him into their gym and spent almost 4 hours rehearsing with him. But while they were sleeping, Mo Ting noticed that, even though Tongning tried her best to hide it, there were still bruises all over her body. So the CEO had no choice but to wake up in the middle of the night to look for medicine for his wife. For the sake of a short 2 hours on screen, the price that an actor had to pay was too high. After helping her apply medicine, Mo Ting's heart ached. But he thought to himself, this was the real Tongning, the Tongning that was made of flesh and blood. For the sake of her goal, Tongning was willing to sacrifice herself. The next morning, Tongning received a phone call from Wuxia. Strange, everyone else was notified of their auditions at 2 p.m. Why did they tell you to go at 3 p.m.? Is there a different time for the lead actors? After receiving this answer, a cold glint appeared in Tongning's eyes. She then replied, I understand. Tongning, don't tell me someone is actually scheming something behind your back? I'm not sure, but we have to be cautious, Tongning replied. Don't worry, I can handle this. I'm not worried. I'm more worried about the person that's targeting you, Wuxia said before she hung up the phone. She was no longer a manager. Instead, she was working as Feng Yu's assistant at Hai Rui before she took the promotion test. In reality, the main reason was because she was preparing for pregnancy. Tongning put down her phone and gave Song Yinshu a phone call. I need to get ready. Come pick me up and take me to the audition location. You're early? Song Yinshu was a little surprised. Aha, Tongning nodded. There's been a change in the situation. In order to adapt to the situation, she decided to stay close to the agency. 1:30 p.m. Those that had been notified of their auditions began to arrive one after another. This included Gu Heng. It seemed she was determined to get the role. She was one of the few actors in the country who had martial arts skills, and her martial arts movements were powerful and smooth. Therefore, police films would usually consider her first, mainly because of her rich experience. Tongning was among the 100 people. She was wearing a normal t-shirt and a black sun hat. She was sitting on a chair reading her script in the most ordinary way possible. She even hid her legs under the chair. This caused everyone to overlook the fact that this low-key woman was the Tongning that attracted attention no matter where she went. The audition took place at the Beijing Academy of Performing Arts. This was Wei Yan's alma mater. At this moment, over 100 people were waiting in the spacious classroom while the audition candidates entered the rehearsal room. As time was tight, the person whose name was called quickly went to the audition. Among them, there were those who went in and came out, and there were also those who stayed for 10 minutes. Hey, didn't they say that Tongning was going to audition? Why isn't she here yet? In the crowd, someone began to gossip to ease the tense atmosphere. Actually, among these people, most of them had some background or qualifications. Otherwise, how could anyone act in a famous director's movie? I haven't seen her yet. That was what Wei Yan's assistant told Wei Yan at the judging panel. Wei Yan nodded his head. You must keep this a secret. When it's Tongning's turn, remember to call her by name. Okay. Elder Mo was also in the rehearsal room. However, he sat in an inconspicuous position. Just because you said it was 3 p.m., it's 3 p.m.? Why can't you use your brain? Elder Mo expressed his disappointment that Tongning hadn't appeared. It was obvious that Wei Yan wanted to eliminate Tongning, but he was worried about Hai Rui's reputation. So he found an excuse for Wei Yan. Soon, Gu Heng entered the rehearsal room accompanied by her assistant. Apparently, after her performance, the judges all nodded their heads in approval. They were just short of making a decision on the spot. But, even if they didn't say it out loud, they still approved of her performance. So they insisted on watching until the end. Director Wei, it's Tongning's turn. Go invite her in. Wei Yan said as he lowered his head. Since Tongning hadn't arrived, he could at least give Elder Mo an explanation. But, just as the assistant went out to invite Tongning, a person wearing a hat suddenly stood up from within the crowd. Needless to say, her height was enough to prove her identity to everyone. But to everyone's surprise, no one recognized Tongning, including the assistant, who had assumed Tongning hadn't arrived yet. Seeing Tongning walk over to his side, the assistant was a little surprised. How was he going to explain this to the director? Plus, he had clearly told Tongning to arrive at 3 p.m. How did Tongning arrive on time? Enduring the awkwardness, the assistant led Tongning into the rehearsal room. At this time Weiyan, who was looking down at Tongning's resume, lifted his head and saw her. His eyebrows twitched. "Good morning, judges. I am Tongning." Tongning removed her hat, revealing a head of short hair. Short hair. That's right, she was wearing a wig. This was how the thug in the film looked. What was even more surprising was, Tongning was wearing ripped jeans, white shoes and a baseball jersey. Out of the 4 judges, apart from Weiyan, the others were pleasantly surprised. With this outfit, Tongning was like the female thug standing in front of them. Sure enough, the rumors said that Tongning was good at reading people. It turned out they weren't lying. She had come prepared. Meanwhile, Elder Mo, who was sitting in the shadows, almost clapped his hands and cheered. This young woman was indeed interesting. He noticed a dark look flash across Weiyan's eyes, but in Weiyan's heart, he was certain that Tongning was only good at silent scenes. So even if Tongning arrived on time for her audition, she still wouldn't pass. Even if she passed, he would find another reason to reject Tongning and let Gu Heng take over. At least he would be more satisfied with Gu Heng's performance. "You can start." "I have a request," Tongning said to the judges. "I would like to ask Director Weiyan to act in my film. I wonder if you would be willing." Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Tongning to be so brave. She didn't want anyone else. She actually wanted Weiyan. Weiyan revealed an interesting expression. He leaned back in his chair, threw away his pen and nodded his head. "Sure. How do you want me to cooperate?" Tongning had even prepared her own props as she handed Weiyan a gun. In The Lost Relative, there is a scene where the female lead and male lead are trapped in a cave. In that scene, the male lead held a hostage and was trapped in a cave with the female thug. According to the script, the male lead had his foot on the hostage's back and the gun in his hand pointed at the other hostage's head. At this time, the female lead was sitting on a rock facing off against the male lead. There was a silent scene. But the most exciting part was the fight scene at the end. After the female lead is shot, she pounces over to grab the gun. Weiyan never expected that Tongning would act in such a place. But he didn't think Tongning would be able to act in such a place. Chapter 421. Are you sure you want to act that scene? Weiyan asked suspiciously. Yes. Tongning nodded her head confidently. I'll fulfill your wish. After speaking, Weiyan gestured for his assistant to hand him the script. After familiarizing himself with it, he turned to Tongning and said, "Let's begin." When he said he would fulfill her wish, he didn't mean to fulfill her wish, he simply wanted to see what she was capable of. Afterwards, he sat down on a chair and placed the prop under his feet. He then pointed his gun at it. Tongning squatted 2 meters away from him. Her head was originally lowered. But as she lifted her head, her eyes were red and filled with anger, panic and a complex expression. The judges were immediately shocked. At this moment, there was no longer any trace of Tongning on her body. She was the female fighter. You've been missing for 12 years. I've been searching for you for 12 years. Everyone said I was crazy. When I saw someone wearing the same clothes as you drowning, I hugged the body and cried for an entire day and night. Tongning lowered her voice and made it sound hoarse and serious. Not only that, her voice trembled as she questioned her. This shocked the judges. Weiyan was stunned for a moment. He didn't know how to respond. He had never expected Tongning to get into character so quickly, and the image of the female fighter was so clear. Wait a minute, let's start again, Weiyan said. Tongning immediately put away her previous expression and returned to the aloof Tongning. All of this happened in the span of a second. Although she had the same makeup, Tongning was still Tongning and the female fighter was still the female fighter. Weiyan was once again stunned. This time he did not plan to brush her off. After all, he had seen Tongning's non-acting scenes and knew he shouldn't underestimate this model-turned-actress. Afterwards, he readied himself and Tongning lowered her head once again. This time, she actually continued with her previous words and continued acting. There was no need to start again. The child stood beside me and told me, "Mom, this person isn't Dad. You've picked up the wrong person." In the end, I laughed and cried at the same time as I asked the family to take him away. You bastard! Tongning spoke hurriedly and loudly. Her words were laced with grievance and even a hint of hatred. You are a police officer and I am a robber. We can't walk the same path. Weiyan finally caught up to Tongning as he sneered with his eyes wide open. We will definitely walk down the same path, because we can die together. After speaking, Tongning suddenly pounced towards him. Weiyan fired a gun at Tongning. Tongning held onto her stomach as she rode on top of him and bit his arm. Weiyan, who was so strict with himself, naturally had his own standards as well. So even though he was a true fighting expert, when it came to a real fight with Tongning, he found it extremely difficult to win. Because at this moment, the female fighter had completely disregarded life and death. When she exchanged blows with him, every punch landed on his flesh, and she used all her strength. But what surprised Weiyan the most was, Tongning's movements and posture were in no way inferior to Gu Heng's. Especially the look in her eyes. It was the kind of look that said she was putting her life on the line. Although in the end she was still captured by him, he could not forget the expression on the female fighter's face. The expression on her face, that if she persisted a little longer, she would be able to escape, made his heart skip a beat. The person in front of him was like she had come to life from a script. She was so realistic and pitiful. However, Tongning's performance came to an end, due to time constraints. The judges were speechless for quite some time. They couldn't believe that someone could actually act. Her acting was so realistic that it made them break out in a cold sweat. Weiyan stood rooted to the ground. After quite some time, he finally recovered from his shock. He had never experienced an actress with such a powerful aura. For the sake of her character, she was willing to immerse herself in her own life. Everyone else was putting on an act and pretending to be someone else, but Tongning was putting on an act and showcasing herself. Weiyan felt extremely regretful. How could he have assumed that Tongning could only act in non-acting scenes? He didn't like to use stunt doubles. It would ruin the feel of the film. But Tongning, do you need a stunt double? Weiyan asked. When I filmed Stupid and W.H., I did not use a stunt double, Tongning replied. No matter how difficult the action is, I can learn it. Okay, Weiyan nodded his head. Weiyan nodded his head and pointed to Tongning. You must act in The Lost Relative. Hearing this, everyone was once again shocked. Weiyan had never said something like this to an actress during an audition. You must act in The Lost Relative. Not only that, he turned to his assistant and said, since the female lead has been confirmed, let's proceed with the audition for the supporting roles. Thank you, Director Wei. Tongning immediately bowed. I have one more question. I told someone to notify you that the audition was at 3 a.m. Why did you arrive so early? Weiyan asked straightforwardly. Since Tongning had arrived, it was obvious that she was smart. Since she was smart, there was no need to beat around the bush. I arrived at 9 a.m., Tongning replied honestly. No matter what time it is, I was determined to get the role. Tongning was trying to tell him that she had done a lot of preparation for the role. In fact, she had arrived early in the morning and had been waiting. She did not mention the dirty tricks behind her back, because she wanted to save Weiyan some face. However, Weiyan replied, I purposely put you in a difficult position. But it's obvious that you were born for this industry. After speaking, Weiyan returned to his seat. Go back. We will discuss the contract another day. Okay. Tongning nodded with a smile. After responding, she walked out of the rehearsal room, leaving behind a few judges who continued to compliment her. She's scary. I've never seen anyone that can control their performance so well. I can't believe it. She's only changed careers less than half a year ago. She's already been studying others for 10 years, Weiyan replied. But I never expected that her fighting moves would be so on point. It seems she really put in a lot of effort into preparing. You can't reject an actress like this, can you? The other judges laughed. I broke out in a cold sweat watching her. I wonder how she managed to do it. Perhaps God is a gift from the heavens. Even if she was gifted by God, without hard work, how could she be so amazing? Weiyan understood. Especially when he saw the bruise on the back of Tongning's hand. He realized that she had high expectations for herself. Elder Emo sat in the shadows and nodded his head. This granddaughter-in-law of his was quite a character. She was worth digging. Chapter 422. I heard the female lead has already been confirmed. Have you guys heard? That can't be possible. Half of the people haven't auditioned yet. It's true. I have some connections on set. I heard the female lead has already been confirmed. Then who is it? Is it Gu Heng? The remaining people had already heard the news. As for those that had auditioned, they heard from Wei Yan's assistant that they were only auditioning for supporting roles. But even if it was a supporting role, they still fought tooth and nail. After all, even if it was just an extra, it was still possible for them to appear on screen. Everyone assumed that Gu Heng was the one that had been confirmed. Even Gu Heng herself thought so. After all, a role like a thug was tailor-made for her. Out of all the actresses that had been auditioned, she had the highest chance of acting. However, to her surprise, that very night, Gu Heng's manager received news that Tongning was Wei Yan's female lead. So she asked Gu Heng if she wanted to play the role of the older sister. How much did Hai Rui bribe Wei Yan with? Gu Heng asked as she stood under the chandelier with her arms crossed. I heard Wei Yan has already sent the contract over. Jia. I suggest we accept even a supporting role. Firstly, this is a rare opportunity. Secondly, you can prove that you are 1,000 times better than Tongning. Of course I want to accept it. Gu Heng closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The male lead of the film was her boyfriend, Bai Qiusheng, who was also a famous martial arts star. The two had agreed to fight for the male and female leads of the film together. But Bai Qiusheng's role had already been confirmed, while Gu Heng's role had been snatched away. Jia, don't be angry. Being able to act in Wei Yan's film is the most important thing. Her manager comforted. What's the point of saying this now? Who told your PR to not be as good as Hai Rui? Gu Heng turned around and leaned against the sofa, her eyes filled with unwillingness. Forget it, I can't blame you. After all, your opponent is Mo Ting. It would be strange if you could beat him. Deep down, Gu Heng believed that Tongning got the role because of Hai Rui's PR and Mo Ting. But she didn't realize that Tongning actually had the ability. After all, who would want to admit defeat in front of a newcomer? Tongning secured the role as she wished, but Mo Ting's heart ached. After returning home, he grabbed the medicine prepared by the doctor and rubbed it all over Tongning's body. Tongning sat on the sofa. Seeing Mo Ting did not respond, she quickly explained. It's just a little difficult at the beginning. As long as you can overcome it, it will be easy afterwards. Plus, these are all small injuries. In reality, Tongning had learned everything she did today from Mo Ting. So, Mo Ting was well aware of the extent of her injuries. During the contract signing this afternoon, I've already discussed it with Wei Yan. Every day after filming, you will directly return home. Tonight, I'll rehearse with you. I'll teach you all the martial arts scenes. I don't trust anyone else. Okay, Tongning nodded. With Mo Ting around, she always carried a treasure box with her. Also, I heard that Gu Heng accepted the role of your sister. Mo Ting put down the bottle of medicine and sat down beside Tongning. The two of you will have quite a few scenes together, and there will even be fighting scenes. Give me a call when you're filming. I must be there. Are you afraid that she will use her power to get back at me? Tongning guessed. She is one of the top 3 female boxers in the country. If she wanted to do something, no one would be able to detect it. I'll listen to you. Tongning wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's neck. This man had already thought of everything for her. What else did she have to worry about? If there was one thing that Tongning and Mo Ting needed to worry about, it would be the secret relationship between Gu Heng and the male lead. Of course, the most exciting part was the appearance of a strange old man. The public did not seem surprised by who secured the role. Whether it was Gu Heng or Tongning, one had the ability and the other had the background. It was inevitable that fans would argue, but it did not affect the bigger picture. Soon, the crew of The Lost Relative released an official announcement. They announced that Tongning would be the female lead and Gu Heng would be relegated to a supporting role. Tongning's acting is not bad, but when it comes to fighting scenes, I'm more impressed by Gu Heng. The commenter above, Don't be too sure. According to Tongning's usual style, she will definitely slap you in the face. So this time, I'm not going to side with anyone. Let's just sit back and watch the film. Tongning always catches us by surprise. So I'm not surprised that she secured the role this time. After all, when she gets serious, even she is afraid of herself. Our Gu Heng is already the benchmark for this genre. Is the director crazy? As a fan of Gu Heng, I really want to say, who can compete with Tongning's background at Hai Rui? Can her husband do anything he wants? I'm sorry, commenter above, but Tongning has taken one step at a time to get to where she is today. She's no worse than you, okay? All in all, the netizens had their own opinions about the casting. After all, they had been slapped in the face by Tongning so many times that they were no longer able to come to a conclusion. If there was something that you said she couldn't do, then she would prove it to you. What could you do when faced with an actress like this? Meanwhile, the male lead, by Qiuxing, received news of the casting and immediately gave Gu Heng a phone call. What happened? How did she lose to Tongning? You shouldn't be asking me. You should be asking Hai Rui, Gu Heng complained. Did you think I didn't do my best? It's not like you don't know how important this film is to me. But our background can't compete with hers. What else can I do? The man on the other end of the phone remained silent for a few seconds before replying. Let me think about it. What else can you think? There are so many fighting scenes in this film. What do you think? Bai Qiuxing asked. For Tongning, this film was simply an opportunity. But for him and Gu Heng, it was the key to fighting for the annual Fei Tian Awards. After being a secret couple for so many years, they wanted to rely on the awards to solidify their status. Once their relationship was revealed, it would reduce the impact on them. But Tongning had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Qiuxing, are you planning to force her out of the cast? Bai Qiuxing replied. Don't get involved in this matter. Otherwise, you will be the biggest suspect. After all, you are the beneficiary. But if others find out? No one will find out. The filming of such a dangerous film has always been dangerous, Bai Qiuxing replied firmly. Bai Qiuxing replied firmly. Gu Heng, Hai Rui can't blame us for this matter. Tongning was the one that stole your role first. Gu Heng thought about it carefully. She was 32 years old this year, and didn't have many years left to waste. So she had to grab hold of this opportunity. Chapter 423. Filming began in July, and the film was scheduled to be released in December. As for the Fei Tian Awards, it would be held in February of the following year. As a result, The Lost Relative was her biggest hope. And this year her agency had the intention to help her with the judging panel. If she missed out again, the agency might shift their focus to someone else. Bai Qiuxing was right. She couldn't wait any longer. In this circle, who didn't want to live for fame and fortune? For the sake of Tongning, hadn't Mo Ting put in a lot of effort? When it was time to step on others, Hai Rui did not show any mercy. After focusing on her career as an actress, Tongning spent even less time in public. Apart from necessary events, she practically never left her home. She was doing her best to prepare for her new film. After all, the challenges she faced this time were even more difficult. In order for Tongning to better integrate into her role as a police officer, Mo Ting hired a professional police officer to give her the same strict training as a police officer. Whether it was the way she walked, the way she fought, or the way she held the gun, she had to make sure she was the same as a real police officer. As a result, Tongning's heroic spirit became stronger and stronger. In fact, every time Long Jie saw her holding a gun, she couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. People who don't know might really think you're a police officer. Tongning put down her fake gun and leaned against the wall. Being a police officer is an amazing profession. My job is to present the best side of the police to the public. All right, your husband was afraid that you would be hungry, so he specifically asked Lu Che to call me and ask me to bring you a nutritious lunch. Don't just focus on practicing, come over and eat something. Yes, Tongning nodded. Long Jie opened the lunchbox and sat down with Tongning to eat. However, before they started eating, Long Jie suddenly said to Tongning, "Do you want me to ask around about the male lead? Also Gu Heng, who lost to you. has become a supporting character. I'm afraid she won't be satisfied. You're finally on your guard, Tongning smiled. If you have time, you can ask around. Okay, I will do it later. After speaking, Long Jia suddenly turned around with an unnatural expression on her face. Is there anything else? Tongning saw through her hesitation, so she took the initiative to ask. Say the older I get, the harder it is to get pregnant, right? I've been preparing for pregnancy for so long, but my stomach hasn't moved at all. I'm a little worried that there's something wrong with me, Long Jia said worriedly as she put down her chopsticks. Tongning, I want to give birth to Lu Che's child as soon as possible. Have you had a checkup? Tongning asked her gently. I don't dare to go. You better discuss this with Lu Che. This is a matter between you and your wife. Don't always be a taciturn person. Sooner or later, something bad will happen. Haven't you learned your lesson? Tongning was referring to the time Long Jia was forced to kneel. Long Jia nodded her head. Okay, I'll discuss it with him at home. Tongning looked at Long Jia's lowered head and began to worry. Why was a carefree person like Long Jia in such a rush to have a child? After Long Jia left, Tongning gave Lu Che a phone call. Madam? I'll pass the phone to the president now. No need, I came looking for you. Tongning replied as she leaned against the table. Do you know what Long Jia has been worrying about lately? She seems to be absent-minded when she's eating. Ting may have given you a lot of work, but don't forget to take care of the people around you. Lu Che furrowed his brows. Of course, he understood Tongning's good intentions, so he nodded his head in seriousness. Thank you for your concern, madam. You are the one taking care of the most important people in my life, Lu Che. I understand, Lu Che replied. Afterwards, Lu Che hung up the phone. Meanwhile, Mo Ting lifted his head and looked at him darkly. Lu Che smiled awkwardly and explained. The madam called me because of Longman President. Please don't misunderstand. My wife called you because she's worried about you. Take care of your family, Mo Ting said calmly before he lowered his head and continued to work on some documents. Lu Che took a deep breath. Although he knew Long Jia had a lot on her mind recently, he didn't expect it to be so serious. It seemed, the pressure his parents put on her was quite a bit. It was time to find an opportunity to resolve it. With this thought, Lu Che left Mo Ting's office and gave his parents a phone call to arrange a time to meet up. Sometimes all a woman wanted was a firm attitude from a man. Late at night, as Tongning returned home from the training grounds, Mo Ting was already sitting on the sofa. Tongning dragged her exhausted body over to him. However, he hugged her and placed her on his lap. You gave Lu Che a phone call? How did you know? Tongning was a little surprised. He picked up the phone right in front of me. Mo Ting said unhappily. Mrs. Mo, it seems you aren't afraid that your husband will be jealous. President Mo, an appropriate amount of jealousy is good for one's health, Tongning giggled. She then held on to Mo Ting's handsome face and explained. Originally, I didn't want to get involved in Long Jia's personal matters. But with Long Jia's personality, sometimes she is too considerate of others and ends up harming herself. I don't want her to do anything stupid, so I gave Lu Che a reminder. I know, Mo Ting replied. A man shouldn't be involved in a woman's private conversation. In that case, are you still jealous? Tongning leaned over and bit down hard on his neck. Mo Ting placed his hand on the back of Tongning's hand and held onto it. However, he realized, after holding onto the gun for so long, calluses had formed between her fingers. My heart aches for you, Mrs. Mo. After hearing this, Tongning gave him a kiss. What about now? Are you still heartbroken? I really don't know what to do with you. Yes, he had no choice. Mo Ting had dominated the entertainment industry for so many years, but no one or anything had ever made him feel helpless. That was, until he met Tongning. This was the only woman that he was willing to do anything for. Let's go. I'll carry you upstairs to apply some ointment. After speaking, Mo Ting lifted Tongning in his arms. Let's see if you come back tomorrow with this many injuries. The film is about to start filming. I will personally deliver the thing you want me to bring back to you, Tongning said in a serious and confident manner. She also wanted an award, because she deserved it. I will definitely make your wish come true. Of course, bribing the judges? Of course, bribing the judges? That was something Mo Ting felt was shameless and an insult to Tongning. But he firmly believed that whatever his wife wanted, she wouldn't be able to run away. After all, whether it was as an actress or as a model, she had always given her all. Chapter 424. It didn't take long before the producers of The Lost Relative held a press conference in Beijing. That night, Tongning was confirmed to attend. For Tongning's fans, this was undoubtedly the last chance they would get to see her before she went into seclusion. So they all rushed to Beijing from all over the country just so they could get up close and personal with her. From being a model to an actress, Tongning's fans experienced a huge change. But after seeing Tongning's steadfast attitude, they learned a lot of good qualities from her. This was also Tongning's first time meeting the rest of the cast and crew. Backstage, she got to know Bai Qiuxing and Gu Heng. Bai Qiuxing was tall and well-built, but he had a gloomy aura. When he didn't speak, he gave off an oppressive vibe. He resembled the male lead of the film. Needless to say, Wei Yan's eyes were indeed sharp. Gu Heng, on the other hand, had a head of long, fluffy hair and appeared polite. It was hard to tell how she treated people. It was obvious that she spoke the same language to everyone. I heard your audition was amazing. I'm looking forward to our upcoming collaboration. Gu Heng stretched out her hand with a slight smile. Tongning responded with a gentle smile, as she held onto Gu Heng's hand and shook it gently. Have you guys greeted each other? Wei Yan suddenly entered the waiting room with a smile. It's almost time to go on stage. In a moment, the reporters will have some sharp questions. Make sure you guys answer them properly. Don't worry, Director Wei. Gu Heng nodded her head generously. By the way, Tongning, why isn't President Mo here? Wei Yan had heard that Mo Ting was Tongning's manager, and that Mo Ting only had one artist under his care. But whether it was the audition or the press conference, or was the manager? He'll be here in a moment, Tongning replied. Gu Heng and Bai Qiuxing looked at each other without saying a word. But as soon as they heard Mo Ting's name, the disdain in their eyes intensified. However, they hid it too well, so no one noticed. Afterwards, the press conference began. Gu Heng appeared first because she was playing a supporting role this time. Seeing her boyfriend appear with Tongning, Gu Heng felt a little upset. But she had to endure it. A moment later, the male and female leads appeared together. Feeling the passion of the crowd, Tongning and Bai Qiuxing greeted the fans generously. Haha, while CEO Mo isn't here, can I say something? The male and female leads are very good, right? The host joked boldly. Tongning smiled embarrassedly as she picked up the microphone and replied. He will be watching the live broadcast. That's right. The female host quickly covered her mouth and pretended to be nervous. Luckily, our Tongning reminded us. Actually, they are quite compatible. That's right. Of course, he has to be matched in the film. But who can compare to Mo Ting in real life? Our Ning is marrying the best, okay? Hearing the discussions of the fans below the stage, Gu Heng sneakily glanced at Bai Qiuxing. She couldn't help but feel the pain in her heart that the public had dragged Tongning and her lover together. At the same time, her female lead had been snatched away and her boyfriend was about to be snatched away by Tongning. However, no one noticed Gu Heng's expression. After all, her relationship with Bai Qiuxing was that of a secret lover. Not long after, Mo Ting arrived from Hai Rui and sat in the front row of the fans. As expected, the husband and wife followed each other. The fans erupted in cheers. However, Mo Ting remained calm as he simply looked at Tongning and scanned his eyes across the other people on stage. As Tongning was standing side by side with Gu Heng, she couldn't see the expression on Gu Heng's face. But Mo Ting could easily tell what she was thinking. Of course, at this time, he could only speculate that Gu Heng was angry at Tongning for stealing the role of female lead, so she needed to be cautious. Following on, it was time for the reporters to ask questions. Of course, they were already prepared to be asked tough questions. But they never expected that the first question would hit Gu Heng where it hurt. The first question, I would like to ask Director Wei Yan. Of course, the two actors on stage are both very talented. But I would like to know why you chose Tongning over Gu Heng. The reporters stood up and asked politely. Although the questions were tough, Weian was already used to it. Just like you said, they are both very talented. But they each have their own areas of expertise and roles that suit them. So, I made these arrangements to make the film even more exciting. To put it bluntly, they were playing Tai Chi. Can you tell us in detail what they are good at? In your eyes, what do you think of them? Weian turned his head and scanned his eyes across the two women. He then smiled and replied, "In my eyes, Gu Heng is like a fierce tiger. Her performance often makes people feel relaxed. Plus, the impact it gives off is strong. Her fighting scenes are also very exciting and contain the aesthetics of violence. As for Tongning, don't be fooled by her gentle appearance. In reality, she is like a sleeping lion. Not too long ago, you have all seen her work. Although she started out as a model, it does not hinder her talent and her hard work. So they each have their own strengths. There is no way to compare them." How could the director describe these two beauties to be so fierce? The host laughed. All beauties are fierce. In that case, I would like to ask Qiuxing my second question. Since you are about to work with Tongning, I would like to be a little nosy. On behalf of the public, I would like to ask, what are your criteria for choosing a partner? The reporters quickly changed the topic to Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing was dressed in a burgundy suit as he smiled at the cameras. I want to be tall and quiet. In that case, which type do you prefer? The host continued to gossip and dragged Tongning and Gu Heng into the conversation. Bai Qiuxing looked left and right before he cleverly replied, I like women like Su Tong. Su Tong was Tongning's name in the film. Gu Heng's eyes immediately turned red. Although she knew they were just putting on a show, it was hard for her to accept that her boyfriend was a perfect match for another woman in front of her, while she was thrown to one side like a fool. This scene was extremely ironic to her. As a result, her hatred towards Mo Ting and Hai Rui intensified. But who told her not to get her hands on the best resources? If this wasn't the most important opportunity for her, she wouldn't have bothered fighting with Tongning. But now she had no other way out. Chapter 425. Towards the end of July, The Lost Relative officially started filming. Originally, Tongning wanted to wait until after Mo Ting's 33rd birthday before she joined the cast. But as her manager, Mo Ting naturally had to consider her image on set, so he asked her to synchronize with everyone. I know you want to be by my side, but when the time comes, I will come and pick you up, Mo Ting said with a smile as he ran his hand through her hair. Okay. Tongning stood on her tiptoes and planted a kiss on Mo Ting's lips before she entered the set. To her, the most important thing in the world was her husband. Whether it was modeling or acting, Mo Ting was nothing compared to 1/10,000 of her heart. For acting, she could give it her all. But for Mo Ting, she could even risk her life. Song Yenshu accompanied Tongning into the set. That day, after burning incense, Tongning checked into the hotel. As her scenes were scheduled to start the next day, she racked her brain trying to think of a birthday present to give Mo Ting. Late at night, Tongning, Song Yenshu and Weian were returning to their room after dinner when they bumped into two familiar figures in the hotel's sky garden. Although it was only for a moment, Tongning could tell who they were. Even Song Yenshu stopped in her tracks and called out, Ningjia. I saw them, Tongning whispered. Do you want me to ask around? Song Yenshu asked. Just keep it to yourself. Tongning reminded. Before we confirm it, don't tell anyone. Gu Heng would never have imagined that the relationship she and Bai Qiuxing had been hiding for so long would be discovered by Tongning so easily. Even though, Tongning only saw the two of them sneaking past. Okay, Song Yenshu nodded. Although Tongning said this, it didn't mean she didn't take the matter to heart. On the contrary, if the male lead and the supporting actress were to have an ambiguous relationship, it would be extremely disadvantageous for the female lead. You will have a scene with Gu Heng tomorrow. It's best to be careful. Song Yenshu had already been warned by Mo Ting, so she was extra careful about Tongning's safety. I understand, Tongning nodded. Afterwards, the couple entered their hotel rooms one after another. Previously, Mo Ting had told her to give him a phone call if she had a scene with Gu Heng. At that time, she really thought Mo Ting was making a mountain out of a molehill, but now, She took out her phone and dialed her husband's number. What's wrong? Mo Ting appeared to be driving. Stop the car first, I'll tell you later. Tongning was worried about Mo Ting's safety. Mo Ting let out a gentle laugh as he quickly stopped the car by the side of the road and asked, Speak, what's wrong? I have a scene with Gu Heng tomorrow. The third scene will take place in the afternoon. Tongning said in a low voice. I want you to come over. After hearing this, Mo Ting's eyes darkened. Especially when he thought about Gu Heng's expression on the day of the press conference. So he immediately agreed. I'll come over tomorrow afternoon. Don't worry, wifey, I'll be here. I know. It's fine. Go back to work and rest early tonight. Don't stay up late to deal with work while I'm not around. I'll give you a call later to check on you. Okay. After speaking, Mo Ting hung up the phone. At the same time, he guessed that Tongning must have discovered something. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given him a phone call right before filming started. But since Tongning didn't say anything, he didn't intend to ask. If she wanted to ask, she would naturally tell him. This was the tacit understanding between the couple. Late at night, in a secluded room in the hotel, the two people on the big bed had just finished their entanglement. They were hugging each other and leaning against the headboard to calm down. Gu Heng wrapped her arms around Bai Qiuxing's neck and whispered in his ear. Tomorrow, Tongning and I will have a scene together. In fact, it's going to be an intense argument. Why don't you let me do it? No. Bai Qiuxing rejected. It's too risky. But if I wait for you two to film together, I'm afraid it will take too long. Tomorrow, I have a scene where I pull Tongning's hair and hit her head. No. Why? This isn't the first time something like this has happened on set. Even when we weren't famous, we were treated the same way. But we simply said we lost control and didn't control our strength well. All in all, just wait patiently, Bai Qiuxing said as he placed his hand on Gu Heng's shoulder. Be a good girl. Although Gu Heng did not say another word, she couldn't help but repeat this thought in her heart. In fact, it was getting stronger and stronger. This was a rare opportunity to injure Tongning and force her to leave the cast. But Bai Qiuxing was extremely cautious. Should she do it first tomorrow and think about it later? With this complicated feeling in her heart, Gu Heng struggled to hold on until the next morning. As the first scene was for Tongning alone, Gu Heng dragged out some time before arriving on set to wait for her scenes. Meanwhile, Tongning was in the middle of filming a scene where she searched for a husband. Gu Heng did not pay attention to Tongning's acting because she was still struggling internally. Plus, the more she looked at Tongning's head, the more she imagined Tongning getting injured and leaving the cast. Hayes, I must say, Tongning's acting is flawless. She has the makings of a good actress. That's right. She doesn't put on any airs, doesn't cause trouble and gets into character quickly. She's not bad at all. Beside her, the staff were all discussing Tongning. This made Gu Heng's hatred towards Tongning rise exponentially. That afternoon, the props team were making their final preparations. Meanwhile, Tongning and Gu Heng were already in position. Gu Heng, as soon as you start filming, grab Tongning by the hair from behind and drag her a few steps forward. Afterwards, push her into the water tank. For safety reasons, we made some changes to the scene. Wei An explained to Gu Heng. Wei An explained to Gu Heng. You already have a lot of experience. I'm sure you know how to control your strength. Okay, director. Gu Heng nodded her head guiltily. Originally, she was supposed to be slammed into a stone pillar, but instead she was going to drown in a water tank. In that case, her plan wouldn't be able to go ahead. Director, there's no need to make any changes. Sister's emotions will explode at this point. Let's just follow the original script, Tongning suddenly suggested. But you might get hurt. I'm sure Gujia is a professional actress. She won't let me get hurt, right? Tongning asked as she turned and looked at Gu Heng in seriousness. Gu Heng was stunned for a few seconds before she smiled. Of course, we are all professional actors. In that case, let's rehearse, Wei An suggested. Chapter 426. Gu Heng looked at Tongning with a complicated expression. She couldn't understand why Tongning was willing to take a risk. But, regardless of everything, She had once again regained her opportunity. Okay, get ready. Gu Heng looked at Tongning standing in front of her and watched her back. According to her abilities, if she wanted to hurt Tongning, it would be a piece of cake. But, for some reason, she felt extremely nervous as her palms began to sweat. But when she thought about it, Tongning was the one that provoked her. So she couldn't blame her for making a move. However, just as Gu Heng was about to make a move, Mo Ting suddenly appeared in front of everyone. He walked onto the set like a king and looked at the couple rehearsing. For some reason, Gu Heng's back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. President Mo, why are you here? Wei Yan asked as he stood up. Are you here to visit Tongning? No. Mo Ting replied calmly as he looked at the couple. Mo Ting looked at the two and said calmly, perhaps it's because I'm scared after seeing Tongning fall during the filming of Hidden Expert. So whenever Tongning needs to film a dangerous scene, I want to personally witness it before I can be at ease. Director Wei, you don't mind, right? That's normal. Why would I mind? Wei Yan shook his head and replied with a smile. He had simply witnessed how much Mo Ting valued Tongning. This was a sign of their deep love, so he couldn't possibly say anything about it. Come Gu Heng, get ready. Gu Heng glanced at Mo Ting and noticed his piercing gaze. It felt like every move she made was under his watch. His gaze was filled with a sense of warning, making her feel so guilty that she couldn't get into character. Even during rehearsals, she ended up failing miserably. Finally, Tongning turned around and noticed Gu Heng was nervous. So she asked, Gu Jia, is Mo Ting disturbing you? No. No, it's my own problem. I'm sorry. Previously, during the filming of Hidden Expert, he personally witnessed me fall and fall. So from now on, whenever there is a dangerous scene, he will personally be present so he can be reassured. I'm sorry if I've caused you any stress, Tongning said as she looked into Gu Heng's eyes. I don't want him to be worried, so I allowed him to visit me. President Mo did it because he cares about you, Gu Heng said in a low voice. Perhaps even she did not realize that her voice was trembling slightly. What can I do? Our fates are connected. He hates it when I get bullied, Tongning giggled. After hearing this, Gu Heng suddenly realized what was going on. Tongning was indirectly warning her that if anything happened to her, Mo Ting would not let anyone off easily, no matter what excuse she used. Gu Heng suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. She suddenly felt a deep sense of fear towards Tongning and Mo Ting. At this moment, there was a clear voice in her head reminding her to be careful. Tongning, you can't touch her. Otherwise you will be finished too. Then let's start again. Gu Heng nodded her head. This time, she adjusted her mindset and focused on filming to distract herself from the evil thoughts she had towards Tongning. This time, the two passed in one take. Of course, she did not notice Tongning's acting because she was too focused on reminding herself. Mo Ting stood on set the entire time. After watching the two film, he finally approached Tongning and asked, Are you okay? Of course I'm fine, Tongning replied with a smile. Gu Jia is a professional actress. There won't be any problems. If something happens to you, then this film has no value. After speaking, Mo Ting wrapped his arm around Tongning's waist and walked to one side, leaving Gu Heng standing there in shock. Up until this moment, she was still feeling a little scared. Luckily, she did not make a move. Otherwise, she didn't know what Mo Ting would have done to her. The couple returned to the van. As they were about to change sets, Tongning finally said to Mo Ting, Just now, before you appeared, I clearly felt a burning gaze behind me. Ting. I think there's something wrong with Gu Heng and Bai Qiusheng. Last night, Yanshu and I saw them in the garden. Although it was just a flash, their movements were suspicious and did not seem legitimate. In that case, don't film anymore. Seeing Mo Ting's serious expression, Tongning suddenly laughed. I'm sure, with your warning just now, Gu Heng won't be able to do anything. She was just scared. Plus, I'm not telling you to quit the film. I'm telling you to solve a problem. Hubby, you should know that I can solve a problem on my own. But I've never hidden anything from you. Apart from the fact that we are united as a couple, I want you to know that I would never joke around with my own safety. As soon as something is wrong, I will tell you immediately. Mo Ting looked at Tongning and pulled her into his embrace. He then placed a kiss on her forehead. I'm here for everything. However, you need to pay extra attention to Bai Qiusheng. A man's thinking has always been stricter than a woman's. Tongning smiled. In this world, you are the only person that can make me willingly submit to you. I don't necessarily lose to anyone else. Of course, Tongning always knew how to speak to Mo Ting's mind. So what reason did Mo Ting have to stop her? It would be best if I can finish filming this film in one piece. But if someone does something bad to me, I'm not someone that can be easily bullied. If I want to bully someone, it will be you alone. Mo Ting took a deep breath helplessly. How could I bear to bully you? Then, I will bully you. Tongning bit Mo Ting's neck out of habit. Gu Heng watched as Mo Ting left the set. But from this moment onwards, she no longer dared to have any thoughts of harming Tongning. She knew that Tongning wasn't a simple person. She was extremely meticulous. Tongning was reminding her and warning her at the same time. Afterwards, Gu Heng sent Bai Qiusheng a message in fear. Don't make a move on Tongning. Otherwise, you will be harming yourself. I can give up on this award. I can wait a little longer. After seeing Gu Heng's message, Bai Qiusheng lifted his head and glanced at her. He did not reply as he simply put away his phone. Gu Heng knew that Bai Qiusheng was stubborn, but she couldn't touch Tongning. No matter how good their reasons were, Mo Ting was not going to let go of the person that hurt Tongning. Luckily, it wasn't too late for her to see through this. Perhaps, she should build a good relationship with Tongning. That way, she could prevent Bai Qiusheng from doing anything stupid. Even though deep down, she wasn't willing to accept that she was merely a supporting actress. Ningjia, should we continue to keep an eye on those two? Song Yenshu asked as she stood behind Tongning after a day of filming. Gu Heng can relax a little, but Bai Qiusheng, let me think. The image of a gloomy yet expressionless man appeared in Tongning's mind. Let's see who can hold on longer. I need to think of a way to tame him. Chapter 427. Everyone thought that when compared to Gu Heng, Tongning would appear petty. She exuded the aura of a supporting character. However, the most surprising thing was, her calmness in private was a stark contrast to her stunning acting skills. It had only been 2 days since filming started, but she had already conquered the hearts of most of the crew. Especially when Tongning and Gu Heng were in the middle of filming, she was able to completely overwhelm Gu Heng with her aura, making it seem natural that she was the female lead. This feeling subconsciously seeped into Gu Heng's heart, causing her originally unbalanced heart to slowly start to acknowledge Tongning. No matter how dirty or messy the scene was, as long as the director asked, Tongning would nod her head and agree without a care for her image. This wasn't something that every actor could do, especially an actress. As for dangerous scenes, she never used a stunt double. As soon as the director notified her, she would go home and rehearse with Mo Ting. Then the next day, she would usually pass with 1 or 2 takes. Most importantly, when it came to her fighting scenes. At times, Gu Heng couldn't help but admit that Tongning's seriousness was always convincing. Even if she didn't know how to do it a moment ago, one shouldn't use this moment to judge the previous Tongning. As usual, Mo Ting visited the set in dangerous scenes. The crew had already gotten used to this. Most of the time, Wayne would get a little excited during filming. So he couldn't help but say to Mo Ting, President Mo, I've never seen an actress with more potential than Tongning. Her comprehension is too high. At times like this, Mo Ting would calmly nod his head and reply, I know. Train her well. Don't let her talent go to waste. Today it's on me. Mo Ting's lips curved upwards as he handed out benefits to the crew. Gu Heng stood to one side quietly as she waited for her scenes to start. Every time she saw Mo Ting on set, she would feel a little anxious. She was afraid that Mo Ting would discover the evil thoughts she once had towards Tongning. If she lifted her head to look at Bai Qiusheng again, she would feel even more guilty. She wasn't sure if Bai Qiusheng had already given up on his plan, or if he was doing something else behind the scenes. At this time, Gu Heng received a message from Bai Qiusheng on her phone. Wait a little longer. Gu Heng was shocked. Just as she was about to reply, she was afraid of being caught red-handed. So, she decided to persuade Bai Qiuxing when they met up. President Mo is treating everyone today. Let's have dinner together after filming, Weian announced. As soon as Gu Heng heard this, her heart skipped a beat. She was afraid that Bai Qiuxing would find an opportunity to make a move on Tongning. So just as Tongning walked past her and was about to change, she suddenly called out, "Hey!" Tongning stopped walking and turned her head in confusion. This was the first time Gu Heng had called out to her. There are a lot of fighting scenes in this movie. You have to be careful. Thank you, Sister Gu. I understand. Tongning smiled calmly. She appeared nonchalant, but she definitely took it to heart. However, Gu Heng couldn't possibly see through her. Ning Jie, what do you think of this matter? Song Yenshu asked as she followed behind Tongning. She lived in fear every day, afraid that someone would make a move on Tongning. Yet, Tongning had always been calm and composed. She understands that hurting me won't do her any good. She's simply trying to please me, Tongning replied. Since she's reminded us, we should be more careful. Okay. Mo Ting's birthday is just around the corner. I want to resolve this issue as soon as possible. I don't want him to worry, Tongning replied. So I have no choice but to take the initiative. Ning Jie, are you planning to? After filming ended, everyone headed to the hotel for dinner. On the way there, Tongning purposely stayed until the end so Weian and the assistant director boarded her van and headed to the restaurant together. Tongning, I previously had a lot of opinions about you. Please don't take it to heart. I've wanted to say this to you for a long time, but I never had the chance. Tongning shook her head and smiled. I've never interacted with you before, so of course I don't trust you. I understand Wei Dao. But, Director Wei, I remember I still have a scene where I race with Bai Qiuxing. Can we film it earlier? I want to focus on the dangerous scenes so Mo Ting doesn't have to visit me every couple of days. Will that be difficult? That's easy. We can start filming tomorrow. We just need to adjust the sequence a little. Weian nodded. Thank you, Director Wei, Tongning said with a smile. What are you thanking me for? Weian was actually feeling a little guilty. He still had a promise with Elder Mo, and in a few days, the old man was going to personally make things difficult for his granddaughter-in-law. So he was hoping that Tongning would make more requests. It would also lessen the burden in his heart. Not long after, the group entered the private dining room. Everyone was already seated, except for Tongning, Weian and a few others. Tongning and Song Yenshu sat down together and glanced at Gu Heng and Bai Qiuxing. Neither of them were talkative people, so in a situation like this, they remained silent. Weian did not immediately notify them to change their scenes. Instead, he tipsily mentioned it to everyone as the dinner was about to end. After hearing this, Gu Heng's expression changed as she subconsciously turned her head to look at Bai Qiuxing, who was sitting not too far away. Her expression was caught by Tongning. Tongning looked at the two without batting an eyelid as a faint smile appeared on her lips. After dinner, Tongning and Song Yenshu stood up to leave. At this time, Gu Heng caught up to Tongning and said, I heard the car race scene will be filmed on set. You need to be careful. Okay, Gu Jie. I'll go to the set tomorrow and give you a demonstration. I've filmed quite a few scenes like this. In that case, thank you in advance, Gu Jie. Gu Heng smiled as she shook her head. She didn't dare to look into Tongning's eyes. She was afraid she would reveal her guilt. Afterwards, Tongning watched as Gu Heng left before she turned around and said to Song Yenshu, Go find the set manager and ask him about the layout of the set as well as the props that will be used tomorrow. Most importantly, find out the car that I will be getting into tomorrow. Don't worry. Although I don't want to think in that direction. Gu Heng has reminded me time and time again, so I have no choice but to be cautious. If their relationship is really improper, then it's entirely possible that Bai Qiuxing will force you out for the sake of his lover. After all, if something happens to you, Gu Heng will directly replace you as the female lead. Let's give it a try. Tongning sighed. In this world, it was hard to differentiate between good and evil. But many of the actions of adults were driven by profit. She had long said that if someone was good, she would be good. If someone was evil, she would be evil. Chapter 428. As for Tongning's safety, after Song Yenshu reported to Mo Ting instructed Lu Che to personally handle the situation. If Bai Qiuxing dared to make a move, then he couldn't blame him for being ruthless. That night, Gu Heng sneaked into Bai Qiuxing's room multiple times, but he was nowhere to be seen. His phone was turned off and his assistant was nowhere to be found. So she was almost certain that Bai Qiuxing was going to use the car race as an opportunity to force Tongning out of the cast. If he succeeded, then it would be a fluke. But what if Tongning already knew? Gu Heng did not dare to think too deeply about this possibility. So she spent the entire night in fear. The next morning, Tongning was at work when she ran into Gu Heng at the entrance of the hotel. "Gu Jie, let me go to the set with you. Didn't we agree yesterday that I was going to give you a demonstration today?" Gu Heng asked cautiously. Tongning smiled. "How could I trouble you?" "It's fine. I'm simply doing this for the sake of presenting the film to the public," Gu Heng replied politely. "Okay then." The three of them walked to the set together. The crew had already contacted the traffic police and sealed off the roads. Everything was ready. Afterwards, Gu Heng placed her gaze on Bai Qiuxing and scanned him up and down. But Bai Qiuxing completely ignored her. It was obvious he felt she was being too soft-hearted. This was Tongning's first time filming a car racing scene. Although every car on the road followed the directions, the director still carefully explained to Tongning what to pay attention to and the details of the scene. Bai Qiuxing stood in front of Tongning. At this moment, Tongning really wanted to know what he was thinking. Had he never worried that she might lose her life because of the severity of the accident? That's right, Tongning's car had been tampered with. Although the cameras did not capture Bai Qiuxing entering the set at 3 a.m., he did not escape Lu Che's eyes. Gu Heng stood in front of Tongning. She could sense that Tongning looked at Bai Qiuxing with disdain and mockery. "Tongning, when the time comes, just focus on the camera and remember your route. Let's rehearse first," Wei Yan said. Tongning glanced at Bai Qiuxing and nodded her head. "Director, can I try the car out first? I've never filmed such an intense scene before, so I'm a little nervous." "Of course." Wei Yan nodded. "Why don't you let me try it?" Gu Heng pushed aside the assistant director and walked over to the group. "I'm more experienced in this sort of thing, so Tongning will be able to learn faster." Wei Yan looked at Gu Heng meaningfully and nodded his head. "Okay, in that case, Gu Heng will demonstrate. Watch carefully." Bai Qiuxing looked at Gu Heng in shock and anger. His eyes were obviously filled with anxiety. He never expected Gu Heng would be so direct as to stop him from hurting Tongning. She was even willing to sacrifice her own life. Actually, she was protecting him. However, she did not feel regret. Tongning is a very professional actress. She doesn't need your demonstration. In front of everyone, Bai Qiuxing said in a deep voice, "Director, let me guide Tongning. After one run, she should be able to learn. That will save a lot of time." Wei Yan nodded his head in agreement to Bai Qiuxing's suggestion. Tongning looked at Bai Qiuxing as the corners of her lips curved upwards. "Director Wei, I think it would be better to let Bai Ji drive me once." Hearing Tongning say this, Gu Heng's face finally turned pale. This proved that Tongning knew everything that she and Bai Qiuxing had in mind, including Bai Qiuxing's plan to hurt her. Tongning is right. In that case, Qiuxing, I'll need you to give Tongning a demonstration, Wei Yan said as he pointed to a nearby car. Although Bai Qiuxing had been tasked with this task, he remained calm as he walked straight over to his car and prepared to give Tongning a demonstration. But his car was out of gas. As soon as the production crew saw this, they immediately apologized. "Sorry, I didn't check properly beforehand. I'll go refuel now." "In that case, Qiuxing, you can drive Tongning's car," Wei Yan said to Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing furrowed his brows and subconsciously looked at Tongning. However, Tongning's gaze contained a sense of interest and mockery. Bai Qiuxing was a little surprised as he stepped out of the car. Just as he was about to open Tongning's door, Gu Heng blocked his way. "Let me drive." This time, Wei Yan was a little surprised, so he asked, "What's the point of fighting about something like this?" Gu Heng turned her head and looked at Tongning, hoping she would be merciful. However, Tongning laughed along with Wei Yan. "That's right, Gu Jie. You were supposed to be resting today. so you don't need to worry about my safety. Everyone is here. Although this is my first time filming a scene like this, I'm not afraid." Gu Heng looked at Tongning. Seeing that Tongning was not backing down, she suddenly didn't know what to do. "Qiuxing?" Weiyan called out to Bai Qiuxing once again. Bai Qiuxing pushed Gu Heng away, boarded the car, and closed the door behind him. Of course, he couldn't tell anyone that there was a problem with the car's brakes. So he looked at Tongning through the rearview mirror with a sense of danger. He never imagined that he would fall into Tongning's hands, a woman's hands. How did she find out? Or, could it be that Tongning had no idea and it was all a coincidence? Gu Heng looked at Bai Qiuxing as he sat in the car. His attitude remained indecisive. Was she going to shoulder all the responsibility? If she revealed the truth, her life would be ruined. But Bai Qiuxing took the risk for her sake. She couldn't let Bai Qiuxing take the risk. So all she could do was beg Tongning. In fact, she even pulled Tongning to one side. "Tongning, I don't want anything to happen to you or Qiuxing today. Because of this, can you please plead with the director? Gujia also knows that there's a problem with the car." Tongning probed. "I simply don't want." Gu Heng's expression was ugly. "He did it for my sake. I hope you can be merciful." "Have you thought about what would have happened if I had sat in that car?" Tongning asked straightforwardly. "Didn't I follow you here? Whether it was you or him, I would have stopped him." "If you can stop him this time, what about next time?" Tongning asked. Gu Heng was left speechless by Tongning's question. "That's right, what about next time? Since he dared to gamble with my life, he should pay me back with his life. I, Tongning, have always been a person that returns a tooth for a tooth. Even if you kneel down and beg me, I will still let him drive that car. I want him to know that not everyone can make him do as he pleases. Because for the sake of my husband, I need to live better than anyone else." Of course, Tongning couldn't possibly say the second half of her sentence. Chapter 429. Gu Heng watched as Bai Qiuxing sat in the car. She felt like all the energy in her body had been sucked out. At this moment, all she felt was fear. "Qiuxing, let's start." Weiyan had no idea what was going on as he smiled, and reminded Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing did not resist as he sped up the car and showed off his driving skills. Everyone on set cheered. But only Tongning and the others knew that the car's brakes had malfunctioned. It wasn't that Bai Qiuxing wasn't afraid, but he never expected Tongning to be this ruthless. But there was no way he was going to admit that he had tampered with the car, unless he wanted to give up his identity as an actor. So, he decided to take a gamble. "Director Wei, something doesn't seem right. Qiuxing can't seem to stop. He keeps going in circles," one of the crew members said as he noticed something was wrong with the car. Weiyan's expression changed as he yelled, "Hurry up and see what's going on." Bai Qiuxing sat in the car and had no choice but to go in circles on the restricted road. Although the car had slowed down, it was still a close shave. "Qiuxing, jump out. Jump out of the car." Bai Qiuxing felt the world spin around him as the front of the car crashed into the side of the road. After a puff of smoke, everyone was shocked as they ran towards Bai Qiuxing. Luckily, apart from being in a daze, Bai Qiuxing was not hurt in any way. In reality, the car didn't have much fuel either. Gu Heng immediately ran over to Bai Qiuxing. Ignoring everyone's gaze, she held on to him. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Bai Qiuxing replied after quite some time. Unknowingly, his back was already drenched in sweat. However, he had single-handedly created this close shave. Needless to say, Tongning was ruthless. She had taught him a painful lesson. Only at the very last moment did he realize that the car had been tampered with for a second time. Even if there was fuel, the car would stop on its own. "What happened to the car?" Weiyan asked concernedly. "Is he okay?" Bai Qiuxing shook his head. "He's fine. The brakes just suddenly malfunctioned." "Who was in charge of this? Get to the bottom of this immediately." Weiyan was furious as he yelled at the staff. Luckily Qiuxing's driving skills are good. "If it was Tongning, have you thought about the consequences?" Weiyan's words were like a heavy blow to Gu Heng and Bai Qiuxing's hearts. One had witnessed the incident with his own eyes. while the other had personally experienced it. No one knew better than them how unbearable it was to be in a situation like this. It's fine as long as you're fine, Gu Heng said guiltily. That won't do. Hurry and send him to the hospital for a checkup. Let's not continue with today's scene. Wei Yan was strict, but he still treasured his actors. In order not to affect the performance of the actors, he paid more attention to the physical and mental state of the actors than ordinary people. Director Xie. After thanking the director, Bai Qiuxing left the set with Gu Heng's support. As they brushed shoulders with Tongning, Gu Heng said one thing. Tongning, I'm convinced. After this incident, I hope we can forget all our grudges. Tongning's expression was calm as she gently lifted her chin. I've said it before, if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. Bai Qiuxing looked deeply into Tongning's eyes before he left with Gu Heng. At this time, Wei Yan approached Tongning and comforted. Did you get a scare? Tongning shook her head. I'm okay. That's good. Tongning, you are a lucky person, Wei Yan said before he turned and left. However, his words were full of deep meaning. Afterwards, Tongning pulled out her phone and gave Mo Ting a phone call. Everything went smoothly. Wifey, when you get back, Mo Ting said gently. Tongning held onto her phone and turned around to find Mo Ting's car parked by the side of the road. Tongning immediately ran over. As soon as she boarded the car, Mo Ting immediately wrapped his arms around her. It's okay, I'm here. Tongning wrapped her arms tightly around Mo Ting's waist. In reality, she still had a lingering fear in her heart. If she hadn't noticed earlier, she would have been the one on the headlines today. Don't you think I was too ruthless? Tongning asked Mo Ting. If you didn't say you wanted to resolve it yourself, I would have been even more ruthless than you. Mo Ting's eyes glowed with an ink-black coldness. On the way back, Wei Yan and Elder Mo exchanged glances like foxes as they sat in the car. Tongning isn't simple, Wei Yan said to Elder Mo at first. I was only guessing. But when I saw Gu Heng rush over anxiously after Bai Qiuxing got into an accident, I suddenly realized what was going on. Those two were obviously trying to set Tongning up. Yet, she forced Bai Qiuxing onto that faulty car. This lesson was too painful for him. I was wondering why she wanted me to film this scene earlier. It turns out, I really can't underestimate her. She barely passed, Elder Mo scoffed. Elder Mo scoffed. Of course, since he was Mo Ting's grandfather, the two of them shared the same thought process. There was justice in this world, but there were some people that deserved to be taught a lesson like this. Tongning's method of dealing with Bai Qiuxing was passable. If he was in her shoes, he would have done the same as Mo Ting. But it wasn't too bad. Unlike Gu Heng, who only knew how to cry when something happened. Although Elder Mo didn't want to admit it, Tongning was already very good in these aspects. She still has a long road ahead of her. Just wait and see. Elder, your granddaughter-in-law is the same as you. I'm impressed by how she dealt with Bai Qiuxing so cleanly, Wei Yan smiled. Wei Yan smiled. Sometimes on set, there were a lot of dirty tricks and unwritten rules. Who would have thought Tongning actually had the ability to cure this kind of evil? Haha, she was indeed Mo Ting's wife. They both used ruthlessness to deal with ruthlessness. Let's talk about it after she gets past me. Elder Mo continued to scoff. In his heart, if Tongning wanted to be Mo Ting's wife, she had to be outstanding in more than just a few aspects. He didn't expect his granddaughter-in-law to be highly educated or have a good family background. He simply wanted her to be on the same wavelength as her family. If her way of thinking and values couldn't be aligned, then wouldn't he be gifting a grandchild to someone else? So he still had a chance to see Tongning. Don't be too strict. After today's incident, I hope Bai Qiuxing will restrain himself. I bet he was quite frightened. When I saw him step out of the car, his face was pale white. Wei Yan thought about it and felt strangely satisfied. Of course, Tongning didn't actually want to take Bai Qiuxing's life, so she was fully prepared. But her method was still ruthless. He wondered if she had always been this ruthless or if Mo Ting had taught her to do so. Chapter 430. Qiuxing, don't go against Tongning from now on. She's not as easy to deal with as we thought. Inside the hospital, Gu Heng sat beside Bai Qiuxing's bed and tried to convince him. I've already thought about it carefully. From the moment she announced her comeback, she has gone from being a model to being an actress. She has done everything flawlessly and won so much applause. She didn't just rely on Mo Ting to back her up. Bai Qiuxing remained silent. Perhaps, he still hadn't recovered from the thrilling scene he had just witnessed. At this moment, he finally understood what it felt like to be scared. Let's focus on filming and stop going against her, okay? Bai Qiuxing hesitated for a moment before he finally nodded his head. After hearing Bai Qiuxing agree, Gu Heng finally let out a sigh of relief. She was truly afraid of Tang Ning's meticulous mind. In fact, she didn't even know how Tang Ning found out, and whether she knew more about the inside story. Tang Ning was indeed scary. The next morning, Bai Qiuxing and Gu Heng returned to the set. Wei Yan immediately approached them and asked, "Are you both okay?" "I'm fine. I was just a little shocked," Bai Qiuxing replied calmly. Tang Ning followed behind them, but she did not humiliate them again. She simply acted like nothing had happened. So, as soon as filming was over, Gu Heng immediately went to look for Tang Ning and asked, "Why didn't you kill us off? You could have used the opportunity to replace us." Tang Ning glanced at Gu Heng and smiled. "I've made my stance clear from the start. I won't take the initiative to attack anyone. Since what happened yesterday is already in the past, there is no need to bring it up again. You may have had evil thoughts, but I didn't go easy on you. So, I have no right to chase you away. Plus, since Wei Yan was the one who chose the actors for this film, he must have his reasons. Even if it was for the sake of the film, I would not make a move again. I'm sure you all know why I was so ruthless yesterday. There won't be a next time. Everyone's job is to film a good film. Plus, Gu Heng, for a couple to maintain their relationship, it's not about the outside world, it's about your own heart. Don't try to provoke me again. For the sake of my own safety, I will do anything." After speaking, Tang Ning left with Song Yenshu, leaving Gu Heng trembling in fear. After hearing Tang Ning's words, she finally understood the difference between them. She never imagined there was a woman like Tang Ning in the entertainment industry. A woman who clearly separated love and hate. At this moment, she had to acknowledge Tang Ning's way of doing things, her attitude and everything about her. When Tang Ning said she wouldn't bring it up, it was as if she had completely forgotten about it. She never hinted, humiliated or reminded him. This made Gu Heng admire her even more. There were plenty of people that stood on the moral high ground, yet coerced others. But Tang Ning didn't care at all. The dangerous car racing scene was to be filmed again 2 days later. This time, Bai Qiuxing gave a serious demonstration and Tang Ning studied hard. Although there were a few NGs, the thrilling scene was finally completed with everyone's hard work. During this time, Tang Ning bumped her head a few times, suffered from motion sickness a few times and vomited everything out. But after 5 minutes of rest, she was able to recover. It was from this moment onwards that Bai Qiuxing's attitude towards Tang Ning changed. Some people were born with more talent than you, yet they worked harder than you. So, you couldn't help but admire how others were able to receive better resources. Afterwards, Gu Heng watched a video of Tang Ning's audition. In the end, she told Bai Qiuxing that she was completely convinced of her role. "Ningjia, it's almost President Mo's birthday. What present are you planning to give him? Do you want me to buy it for you?" Song Yenshu asked as she stood behind Tang Ning during a break in filming. She assumed Tang Ning wouldn't have time to prepare anything for herself during filming. Tang Ning lowered her head and thought for a moment before shaking her head. "I will prepare it myself." "But, you don't even have time. The things he wants can't be bought on the market." Tang Ning smiled as she turned and looked at Song Yenshu. "The next scene is about to start. I'm going to go get ready." Song Yenshu looked at Tang Ning's back as she left and nodded her head in agreement. Mo Ting had everything he wanted, so no matter what he gave him, it wouldn't be a surprise. But, 2 days before Mo Ting's birthday, Wei Yan notified Tang Ning that a big shot would be joining the cast. Although it was only a guest appearance, he requested everyone to cooperate. At first, Tang Ning didn't quite understand what this meant until the man appeared on set. In the film, the man was a retired police officer who was unkempt. Because he had injured someone when he was young, He was dismissed from the police force. But he was good at investigating cases, so Tongning decided to ask him for help. However, not only in the film, even in real life, the man was also unkempt. It was like, once he was put on the role, he had no intention of returning to his original appearance. So no one on set knew who he was. Someone tried to find out who he was, but Wei-An simply smiled and said there would be a surprise in store. But while the man could chat and laugh with everyone else, he only looked at Tongning with suspicion and distrust. This made Tongning wonder if she had offended the man. But from what she could remember, she had never interacted with the man before. But it had to be said, Tongning acknowledged the big shot that Wei-An mentioned. Even though he was old, he was still able to act. From the day he arrived on set, he was already able to imitate the expressions of the entire cast. His acting skills were indeed those of a few decades of accumulation. As the first few scenes were between Bai Qiuxing and the old man, Tongning did not have the chance to interact with him. But the day before Mo Ting's birthday, Wei-An notified Tongning that she would be filming a scene with the old man. The old man was very strict, so she had to be on high alert. Afterwards, Tongning asked Wei-An for a day off, but somehow the old man found out about it. As soon as he heard that he would be filming a scene with Tongning, he turned around and stormed off. I hate people that ask for time off from filming. I'm not filming with her. Get someone else to do it. There are so many people waiting on set. What privilege does she need? She can't even be considered an actress, yet she already knows how to act like a big shot. The old man's words were straightforward. In front of Tongning and the entire crew, everyone felt extremely awkward. But Tongning did not get angry. She simply bowed and said, I'm sorry, senior. Even if the sky were to fall down, I wouldn't ask for a day off. But for this matter, I have to leave. Do you believe that I can get someone to replace you? Tongning, why don't you? Director Wei, I definitely need to ask for a day off. I can do anything in exchange for it, Tongning said sincerely. Wei-An nodded his head and waved his hand. You can go. Thank you. Tongning nodded her head in thanks. Why did she ask for a day off? Wei-An asked confusedly. Didn't Tongning know that this was an opportunity for her to perform? I heard from Assistant Song that it's President Mo's birthday. Oh, no wonder. Wei-An immediately understood. He looked at Elder Mo with a smile. Tongning had always put Mo Ting first. Old man, are you satisfied? Chapter 431. By the time Tongning returned to Hyatt Regency, it was already 11:30 p.m. In order not to wake Mo Ting up, Tongning gently pushed open the bedroom door and walked over to the bed barefooted. With the help of the faint moonlight, Tongning saw Mo Ting had fallen asleep with a document in his hands. Her heart ached as she moved the documents away and placed the red rose on the bedside table. Mo Ting did not wake up at all. Originally, he had agreed to pick Tongning up the next morning, so he rushed to finish his work, so he could spend the day with his wife. But he never expected, at the last minute, Tongning would return home and return to his side. Perhaps he sensed someone was staring at him. Mo Ting opened his eyes cautiously. As soon as he opened his eyes and saw Tongning, he froze for a moment before sitting up. Why are you back? I was rushing to be the first to wish you a happy 33rd birthday. Tongning placed her gaze on the red rose. Mo Ting followed her gaze. As soon as he saw the flower, he couldn't help but laugh. Mrs. Mo, I've never seen a woman give a man flowers. In that case, let me set a precedent, Tongning smiled. But between her brows, there was an unconcealable sense of exhaustion. She had continuously filmed for over 20 hours. Also, she could have this one day off to spend time with Mo Ting. Mo Ting's heart ached as he gently stroked her cheek and pulled her into his embrace. In this world, there would never be another person that would work so hard just to celebrate his birthday with him before 12 p.m. In this world, there would never be another person that would treat him so wholeheartedly and put him first in everything. In this world, there would never be another person like Tongning. I haven't eaten yet and I haven't showered yet, Tongning said in a muffled voice. You must be tired? Aha, I got carsick on the way here and my stomach feels terrible, Tongning replied coquettishly. Go have a shower. I'll make you something to eat first. After speaking, Ting turned to get out of bed. But Ning held him back and shook her head. Seeing you, I feel better. There were no sweeter words of love than this. Ting thought to himself. With Ning's sacrifice, he felt his previous 32 birthdays had all been a waste. If only he had been with Ning from the start. How great would that have been? Then I'll take you to take a bath, and then we'll eat together? All right. Ning nodded her head and buried her head in Ting's arms. Not long after entering the bathroom, she fell asleep. Ting looked helplessly at the bruises all over her body as his heart ached even more. He had already told her not to come home with a body full of injuries, yet she still had to show it to him. To help her sleep more comfortably, Ting also laid down in the bathtub like a cushion. He originally thought she wouldn't wake up until 12 a.m. But as soon as the big clock struck 12, Ning opened her eyes. In a daze, she wrapped her arms around Ting's neck and said, "Hubby, happy birthday." Ting kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow, I'll bring you to a place. I want to give you a present." After speaking, she rubbed her head against Ting's chest and fell asleep again. Ting hugged his wife tightly. He couldn't help but place a kiss on her earlobe. "God knows you are the best present for me." As a man, Ting was an iron-blooded man. Of course, he didn't like roses. But the bouquet that Ning brought home was the most beautiful flower he had ever seen. The next morning, Ting originally thought he would wake up before Ning. But as he sat up, he realized there was no one beside him. Instead, there was a glass of warm water on the bedside table, and a note on top of it. "Hubby, I really don't want you to celebrate your 33rd birthday. Or perhaps. I hate that I'm only 27 years old. I don't want the 6-year gap between us. It feels like when I grow old in the future, you will abandon me and leave this world on your own. So, today is your first birthday. Because this is the first year of our marriage, you are 1 year old today. Hurry and get out of bed. Come to the address I left for you. I'll be waiting for you there." I thought I'd see my wife as soon as I opened my eyes. Ting smiled helplessly as he got out of bed and washed up. An hour later, Ting arrived at the address Ning mentioned. It was a private photography studio. Ting walked in suspiciously as the staff smiled and said, "President please come up to the 3rd floor." Ting stepped into the lift. In reality, he had no idea what Ning's present was. Until he reached the 3rd floor. Under the large chandelier, the floor was filled with wedding dresses. And Ning was standing behind the curtains. Ting stretched out his hand and gently pulled open the curtains. Ning was standing in front of the mirror dressed in a pure white wedding dress. Ting was a little stunned. He had never seen Ning like this before. She wasn't a celebrity or an actress. She was a woman waiting to be married. "I've worn wedding dresses countless times, but we've been married for so long, but we've never taken a proper wedding photo. In the past, if it wasn't for advertising, if it wasn't to announce our relationship, right now, I just want to give you a simple wedding that belongs to us. It belongs to the two of us. I've already arranged for a church. Mr. are you willing?" Ting's heart suddenly felt like it had been struck by a blow as he hugged Ning tightly in his embrace. "Even if I were to repeat this 100 times, I wouldn't feel annoyed." This was clearly a very ordinary matter, but, as long as he was with Ning, he felt it had a special meaning. Many women felt that being doted on would be the happiest thing in their life. But when it came to Ning, not only did she want to be doted on, she also wanted to enjoy the process of doting on someone. Not long after, Ting appeared behind Ning in a white dress. This was the first time Ning had seen him dressed in white. His noble aura did not waver in the slightest. In fact, he looked even more imposing. Ning drove Ting to the church in her wedding dress. Although no one recognized the couple along the way, it was the first time many people had seen such a flashy wedding car. The church was located halfway up the mountain. The couple held hands as they entered the simple church. Facing the solemn God, Ning lowered her head and said to Ting, "I originally wanted to give you something better, but after thinking about it for a long time, I realized you don't lack anything." Ting looked at Ning and said in a serious tone, "It's not that I don't lack anything. It's that everything added up can't compare to you. Although from today onwards, I will be 33 years old, I can promise you that I will protect you for the rest of my life. I will never leave you, even when I'm old. I think our love can give many people the courage to believe in love. All right. He then grabbed his phone from the bedside table and snapped a photo of the couple leaning against each other. He then uploaded it onto his social media account. Of course, as soon as the couple's fans saw the photo, they went crazy. Ah. Oh my God, President Mo is giving out candy, giving out candy. Where are the two of them? There's even a sunset glow behind. It's so beautiful. I knew Tongning would be by President Mo's side on his birthday. It's so sweet. Sob sob sob, I'm so happy. Is it just me? Are you guys wrapped in the blanket? It seems. They aren't wearing any clothes. Haha, you even noticed that. Amazing. After seeing the photo, Hu Jingjing joined the discussion. Don't bully me because I can't see my husband while I'm overseas. I hate people who flaunt their love. President Mo is going to die soon. I want the whole world to be jealous of me. Tongning smiled as she threw away her phone. She watched the sunset with Mo Ting and then the stars. The couple stayed together until the wee hours of the morning. Finally, Mo Ting packed his things and escorted Tongning to the set. However, as they entered the hotel, Tongning did not want Mo Ting to escort her. If you come up, I won't let you go. Then I won't leave. After speaking, Mo Ting quickly dragged Tongning into the room and slammed the door shut. But the soundproofing here isn't very good. After all, this wasn't a high-class 5-star hotel. It's okay. I will make sure you can't make a sound. Tongning felt ever since she and Mo Ting got married. Although they had their share of intense times, it had never been like the past 2 days. It felt like they couldn't get enough of each other from morning till night. Did this mean her love for Mo Ting had increased a little? The next morning, before the sun had even risen, Tongning was still fast asleep by the time Mo Ting woke up. Mo Ting did not wake her up. He simply left her a note and returned to Beijing. He had an important board meeting to attend. As soon as Tongning woke up, she saw the note and headed straight to the set. There was another big problem waiting for her today. The annoying big shot was waiting for her to explain herself. Tongning, you're back. Weian looked at Tongning with a troubled expression. Weian looked at Tongning with a troubled expression as he approached her and whispered, Today, we need to film your scene with Old Hay, but Old Hay. Everyone on set referred to Elder Mo as Elder Hay because he said his surname was Hay. He still doesn't want to act with me, is that right? It's not that he doesn't want to act with you. It's that you don't have the attitude of an actress. Just because it's your husband's birthday, you can abandon the entire production? You're too awesome. Elder Hay complained as he sat to one side. I hope the person I act with is a real actor. If you can't do it, I can tell the production to replace him. Tongning's brows furrowed. This old man did not give her any face at all as he ridiculed her in front of the entire crew. Sorry, I know I shouldn't have taken the day off. But in my heart, my husband is number one and that will never change. Tongning explained as she looked at Elder Hay. I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time. Actually, according to the contract, it was reasonable for Tongning to take the day off. Not only that, if it was any other actor, it was normal for them to take a day off after working so hard on an important scene. The crew simply couldn't understand why Elder Hay kept making things difficult for Tongning. Everyone was convinced by Tongning. What did she make this old man so unhappy about? Either way, there's no room for negotiation. Weian looked at Tongning as his expression turned uglier. He is one of the investors, so he has a lot of authority. Tongning, you should try to coax this old man. But he won't give me a chance, Tongning replied. Weian glanced at Tongning before he turned to Elder Hay and asked, Elder Hay, what do you want Tongning to do? Tell me and we can discuss it. Chapter 433. What did I do to displease you? Are you going to reject me simply because I asked for a day off? Did you really think that your acting was better than Gu Hang's? From what I see, you are still far from her level. Elder Mo scoffed as he sat in his chair. Don't be unconvinced. Gu Heng's acting is stable, but you overexerted yourself in a lot of your scenes. You can rely on your own talent to imagine yourself as the character, but don't forget, as long as you are a normal person, you can't always be someone else. A normal person has a limited amount of time to focus, so your acting isn't always better than Gu Heng's. Unless you are schizophrenic, you can't always be someone else's person. Elder Mo criticized Tang Ning's acting. In fact, he couldn't see any good points in her acting, he simply criticized her. Plus, you appear to be willing to do anything, but deep down you are arrogant. Elder Mo's words were harsh. After he finished speaking, he noticed Tang Ning's expression did not change, so he calmed down a little. It seems you are well aware of yourself. Otherwise, if someone else was in Tang Ning's position, they would have been furious. It wasn't that Tang Ning didn't care, it was just that Elder Mo was speaking the truth and she didn't have the confidence to refute him. Furthermore, in her opinion, this old man had the right to teach her a lesson, because he was very powerful. Not bad. Even after being scolded like this, you did not point at my nose to refute me. I can see that you have a good mentality. Elder Mo glanced at Tang Ning and finally showed a slightly friendlier expression. Being scolded by me now is better than being scolded by the audience later. Tang Ning did not say a word as she quietly listened to Elder Mo's nagging. Everyone on set looked at the two. To be honest, when Elder Mo scolded Tang Ning, they were afraid that she would turn around and leave or do something shocking. After all, she had Mo Ting backing her up. But she acted like a humble student. Even though she was scolded by a teacher, she did not feel embarrassed because she was indeed in the wrong. In reality, Tang Ning's method of dealing with an angry Elder Mo was the best. Because by saying a few words, the anger in his heart would dissipate, and he would not continue to cause trouble. You want me to act with you? Sure, but you have to be my assistant for a week. It depends on my mood. Of course, you have a great husband. You can also look for him, and tell him that you were bullied on the set. Let him come and settle the score with me. Tang Ning looked at the man and then at Wei Yan before nodding her head. Okay. If you promise me, don't hide and cry when the time comes. With that, the old man waved the fan in his hand and stood up. Wei Yan immediately whispered to her. Do you want to move your scenes back? No need, Director Wei. You just need to focus all my night scenes on this week. I can handle it. I can't let my personal problems affect the progress of the film. Tang Ning replied sincerely. Okay, if this old man bullies you too much, you must let me know, Wei Yan reminded. Okay, Tang Ning nodded. Afterwards, Song Yenshu approached Tang Ning from behind and said gently, Ning Jia, I'm sorry I was late. Why don't you tell President Mo? What do you have to apologize for? Don't tell him, I can handle it myself. After speaking, Tang Ning ran after the old man. As for the old man, he did not live in a hotel like the rest of them. Instead, he lived in a small courtyard. Whenever he had free time, he would play with his cats and dogs and take care of his plants. From today onwards, you will be in charge of my daily life. I'm hungry. What does the old man want to eat? Take a guess. If you get it right, I'll finish it all. If not, you will have to cook until I'm satisfied. The old man smiled as he sat on a bamboo chair. Tang Ning glanced at the old man and nodded her head. Please wait for a moment. Elder Mo watched as Tang Ning left and scoffed. Yesterday, you went out to have fun with your grandson, didn't you? Today, I'm going to teach you a lesson. The old man's appetite was the most demanding in the Mo family. Even if he wanted to make a delicacy, he would have to see if he liked it or not. If this brat could control his stomach, he would let her off easy for a few days. She had a good heart. Tang Ning was here to put on an act, but she was now forced to do the old man's laundry and cook. Yet she did not feel wronged at all. In fact, she seemed to be enjoying it. Half an hour later, 3 exquisite dishes were served on the dining table. As soon as the old man saw the vegetables and tofu, he was immediately displeased. Do you think I'm a sheep? You can try it first, Tang Ning said humbly as she handed him a bowl and chopsticks. The old man received the chopsticks and unwillingly picked up the vegetables. With just one bite, the aroma made him feel refreshed. This rascal, Mo Ting, was indeed lucky. He had found a wife who could cook. She was different from the cheap women on the outside. But he couldn't give Tongning any face. So he threw away his chopsticks. I don't eat bland food. In that case, I'll go make some more. Tongning turned around without hesitation. But as soon as Tongning turned around, the old man had already finished half the dishes on the table. He even pretended to be carrying his cat and fed the food to it. After torturing Tongning for half the morning, the old man finally stopped. He then staggered onto the set to watch Bai Qiuxing and the others practice. During this time, the old man kept telling the people around him how he would have handled the scene if he was younger. Everyone listened with interest. Of course, this included Tongning. However, the fact that the female lead had been turned into someone else's assistant made the people on set feel unfair for Tongning. Who was this old man? How did he have such a powerful background that even the wife of the big boss of the entertainment industry had to give him face? From the looks of it, he was just an old man with some acting skills. They had never heard of this person before. What old hay? Even after searching through the history of the entertainment industry for 30 years, they still couldn't find any information on him. How could he torture Tongning like this? Seeing this scene, Bai Qiuxing suddenly had the urge to replace Tongning with Gu Heng. Since old He hated Tongning so much, could he make use of him? So he went to look for Wei in private. Director Wei, if Tongning becomes someone else's assistant, what will happen to her scenes? She will film at night. But this will delay my rest time. I can handle it for a day or two, but if it's a long period of time, I won't be able to handle it, Bai Qiuxing replied. What do you mean? Wei squinted his eyes. Could it be that Bai Qiuxing still had designs on Tongning? I simply hope you can make the appropriate arrangements. Chapter 434. Originally, they agreed that Tongning could go home that night. But after Elder Mo made things difficult for her, she had no choice but to ask Song Yanshu to tell Mo Ting the truth about the situation on set. Mo Ting did not interfere with her decisions. He simply knew who was making things difficult for his wife. Just wait and see. This old man had made his wife suffer a lot. When the time came, he was going to get revenge for Tongning. But right now it was more important for Elder Mo to understand Tongning. So he simply instructed Secretary Song Yin to note down every single thing that Tongning had to endure. In fact, she had to remember it clearly. That night, Bai Qiuxing and Tongning had a scene together. Perhaps it was because of Elder Mo's nagging during the day, but when Bai Qiuxing looked at Tongning again, he felt her acting was a little different than before. As she was a model, although Tongning was talented, she lacked experience. Most of the time, she relied on her strengths and avoided her weaknesses. But at this moment, she had learned to use techniques. The two were currently filming a scene where they brushed past each other. But in reality, Bai Qiuxing knew Tongning was looking for him. So when he found out Tongning's identity as a police officer, he had no choice but to leave her side. Seeing the anxiety in Tongning's eyes, Bai Qiuxing was momentarily distracted. In fact, Wei noticed it. Cut. Qiuxing, what's wrong? It's nothing, director. Let's do it again. Bai Qiuxing calmed himself down as he once again felt conflicted. He wasn't sure if he should replace Tongning. Elder Mo also came to watch Tongning's scene that night. In the end, he scoffed. Looks like you still have some potential. On the surface, Elder Mo appeared to be in a difficult position. But in the end, she was still his granddaughter-in-law. He could bully her, but others couldn't. This was a typical Mo family attitude. The next morning, Tongning's face was a little pale. Seeing this, Elder Mo actually went to sleep in. Tongning lay on the table for a while. Then in the afternoon, she staggered out with Elder Mo to watch other people's scenes. Everyone has their own unique characteristics when they act. Even if it's just a small role, don't overlook their existence. Sometimes, a small role can make the entire film a success. Elder Mo said to the people beside him in a low voice. In reality, he was simply telling Tongning. So Tongning carefully observed the acting of others, and took what she could learn from them for her own use. During a break in filming, Bai Qiuxing lifted his head and glanced at Tongning and Elder Tang. In the end, he decided to give it a try. So he asked his assistant to contact Elder Tang, and Elder Tang agreed to meet with him that night. This time, Elder Tang did not bring Tongning because she had a scene to film. Inside a private room in the hotel, Elder Fong waved the fan in his hand and asked Bai Qiuxing, "If you have something to say, just say it." "Actually, to be honest with you, I want Gu Heng to be the female lead of this film. Since you don't like Tongning, can you replace her? We can discuss the price." Bai Qiuxing asked straightforwardly. The old man's disgust towards Tongning was obvious. The old man glanced at Bai Qiuxing and closed his fan. He then laughed. "Do you think I hate Tongning? At least you prefer Gu Heng." "Who told you that?" Old Master Sheng's protectiveness was immediately triggered. "I did say that Gu Heng was stable the other day, but that was because I didn't mention her flaws. I thought you had already learned your lesson from the car racing scene." Bai Qiuxing's expression changed. Because Tongning did not mention it again, he almost forgot about it. But how did this old man find out? That. Bai Qiuxing tried to explain. "That's enough. The reason why I want Tongning to be my assistant is because I have higher expectations for her. I don't have any expectations for you guys because I don't care about you guys," Elder Tang said in disdain. "Also, if you have bad intentions, God will deal with you sooner or later." After speaking, Elder Tang stood up, but Bai Qiuxing flew into a rage. "Do you think you're so great just because you're one of the investors? If I wasn't great, would you be sitting here right now?" Elder Tang retorted. "Tongning has given you a chance to live, so you should cherish it. If you continue to play dirty tricks, even God won't be able to protect you." After speaking, Elder Tang turned around and left in a domineering manner. Bai Qiuxing was left trembling in fear. He wanted to know what this old man's identity was. He dared to look down on everyone. That night, after Bai Qiuxing returned home, he had no appetite to eat. In the end, he gave his assistant a phone call and gave him a few instructions. So, the next morning, the crew began to receive phone calls from the media claiming that Tongning was being bullied on set by an investor. The media kept calling to verify the matter, but Weian could only dismiss them with an excuse. But the film crew couldn't stand up to all sorts of rumors. For example, Tongning had been following an old man around, and was even seen washing his clothes and cooking for him. This time, the rumors turned into a bloodbath. In fact, there were even rumors that Mo Ting was afraid that his marriage with Tongning would change. When Elder Tang saw the news, he sat down with Weian and scoffed. "This Bai Qiuxing sure doesn't learn his lesson." Bai Qiuxing's move was quite ruthless. If he did this, the media would assume that Tongning was the one that released the rumors. She wanted Bai Qiuxing and Weian to fight while Bai Qiuxing reaped the benefits. "Elder Mo, what do you think of this matter?" "This person can't be allowed to live," Elder Mo said as he waved his fan. "Why don't you reveal your identity? There's no rush." Elder Mo tried to stop him. "We need to wait until he's done with his tricks before we give him a slap in the face. Getting rid of him now would be too easy on him. Also, hurry and find someone to replace him. A person can have their own personality, but they can't have any bad intentions." "Okay, I understand," Weian replied. Even if Elder Mo didn't say anything, he would have done the same. Because if the film was a success, but the male lead had a bad character, wouldn't that leave a stain on his reputation? Of course, he wouldn't allow this to happen. Originally, he thought that if Bai Qiuxing stopped, he would be given a chance. But who would have thought, the desire in his heart would suddenly reignite? So they couldn't be blamed. Actually, the rascal's acting isn't too bad. Elder Mo suddenly mentioned. If he didn't have to take over Hai Rui, he would have been a top actor. Does President Mo know how to act? Weian was suddenly interested. There's nothing he doesn't know how to do. This was something that Elder Nangong had always been proud of. Chapter 435. In that case, why don't you go back and manage Hai Rui for a few months? Why don't we let President Mo act? Weian suggested. In your dreams? Elder Mo scoffed. Was he joking? It wasn't easy for him to get rid of his burden. How could he take it back now? Don't even think about it. Hairui needs emoting to manage. I can't think straight anymore. All I can do is act. Weiyan smiled and did not say another word. Elder Mo had indeed slacked off, but it couldn't be denied that he had single-handedly built up his empire. Those few years in Beijing were glorious. However, after so many years of playing with his grandson, he had long lost the ambition he once had. But when it came to brains, no one could compare to him. Does that mean you approve of Tongning as your granddaughter-in-law? Approve of what? She hasn't even shown her true abilities. Elder Mo waved the fan in his hand. Let's see how she performs. Weiyan looked at Elder Mo helplessly. This old man was stubborn on the outside but soft on the inside. He had already protected Tongning so well, yet he still refused to admit it. However, the matter of replacing Tongning needed to be handled immediately. Who is this dirty old man? Why is Tongning following behind him? Are the rumors true or false? What about Emoting? If they break up, I will never believe in the entertainment industry and love again. The entertainment industry is filthy. What kind of plot doesn't exist? Is Tongning about to go down the wrong path? Tongning shouldn't go out and do whatever she wants. What do you think of President Mo? Oh, I don't believe you. Is that old man really an investor in the film? Why is Tongning washing his clothes and cooking for him? What kind of plot is this? I'm really worried about President Mo's feelings. Does he know about this? The public was in a frenzy as news about Tongning on set spread like wildfire. Of course, the public's desire to know the truth was also strong. They wanted to know if Tongning was really taking things too hard and abandoning herself. She had such an outstanding husband, yet she chose to serve the old man. Plenty of media outlets made phone calls to Hairui. However, the public relations department righteously told the public that it was just malicious slander, and that the rumors were false. Of course, Emoting also saw the news as soon as it was released. His expression was equally gloomy, but it wasn't because he believed the news. Instead, it was because the old man actually tortured his wife so badly. He had always doted on Tongning, so he tried his best not to let her do any housework. Yet this old man made her do his laundry and cook for him. Why? His men. Did he agree? President. Lu Che couldn't understand Emoting's emotions. Was he angry? But that shouldn't be the case. This incident had nothing to do with Tongning. Forget it, I'll endure it for now. Emoting turned off his computer and suppressed the anger in his heart. How are we going to deal with this? What did Weiyan say? Emoting lifted his head and asked Lu Che. It was obvious that someone had purposely leaked the news. As for who that person was, there was a tacit understanding. Director Wei has asked Hairui to recommend a suitable candidate. Director Wei will hold a secret audition and replace Bai Qiuxing at the right time. As there aren't many martial artists in the country and even fewer famous ones, Director Wei won't be able to find a suitable candidate in a short amount of time, Lu Che explained. In reality, Lu Che also wanted to say that Director Wei's choice was none other than Emoting, the CEO. But of course he didn't have the guts. Does the old man have a candidate in mind? No, Lu Che shook his head. Elder Mo isn't too interested in the male lead. As long as it didn't interfere with his acting and training Tongning, he was fine with it. Make a phone call to Bai Qindong. But the madam has just worked with Bai Qindong. If we were to work together again, wouldn't the audience get sick of it? Lu Che was a little worried. After all, the two had already worked together on W.H. In that case, contact an actor from overseas, and we'll work together internationally. In a moment, I'll write down a few names for you to show to Weiyan. After he makes his choice, contact them and check their schedules. The main reason why Emoting made this decision was because he wanted to pave the way for Tongning to enter the international stage. In reality, there was no lack of good martial artists in the country, but their acting was too weak. If they could hire a big name from overseas, it would be able to bring out Tongning's potential. After all, foreign actors always worked hard when it came to acting. Bai Qiuxing had no idea that the entire production crew was already preparing to replace him. From the moment he decided to take revenge, he already had a feeling that the people he offended weren't people he could afford to offend. That night, Tongning prepared dinner for Elder Mo originally, She wanted to head to the set to film her scenes, but Elder Mo waved his fan and said, "Don't waste your energy. In 2 days you will see Bai Qiuxing leave." Tongning furrowed her brows and turned around to look at Elder Mo. "Don't tell me you don't know who started the rumors," Elder Tang said as he picked up his bowl and chopsticks, hiding his satisfied smile as he looked down at Tongning. "Does Director Wei plan to replace Bai Qiuxing? What's the point of keeping a black sheep like him?" Elder Mo scoffed. "If he doesn't have the ability, then he would have to endure it. But since he has the ability, he has the responsibility to maintain the good atmosphere in the entertainment industry. As for those with bad intentions, he will ban them every time he sees them. This is the courage of the Mo family." Ah, Elder Mo was stunned. Oh no, he almost let the cat out of the bag. "It's nothing. In the next few days you can continue filming, but don't stay up too late. Who are you trying to impress with a pale face when you arrive in the morning?" Elder Mo expressed his dissatisfaction. Tongning nodded her head obediently. "Okay." In reality, Elder Mo was indirectly reminding her that he was going to replace her in the next few days. He was telling her not to be too serious, and to take some time to rest and prepare for the real male lead. How could a smart person like Tongning not understand what he was trying to say? So as she left, she had a smile on her face. Although the old man was indeed a little annoying, he was doing it for her own good. He wanted to suppress her arrogance a little. After all, the success of Stupid made her forget that she was still a newcomer. So the timing of the old man's appearance was perfect. On the way back to the hotel, Tongning bumped into Gu Heng. Their eyes met awkwardly, but Tongning said calmly, "He still won't let go. I'm sorry. Since he has made a move, I will definitely stand on his side. After all, he is doing this for me," Gu Heng replied. "I will gather my fans to start a boycott. Tongning, let me give you a reminder. After all, you have always been a good wife to Mo Ting. But this time, in the eyes of your fans, you have done something humiliating." Chapter 436. "This matter isn't up to you guys to decide," Tongning said with a smile. There was no trace of panic or anger in her eyes. This made Gu Heng extremely confused. How is it that no matter what happens, you can always be so calm? Why don't you tell me? That's because I know evil people won't succeed. Tongning smiled confidently. At least in my world, no one has ever succeeded in doing something evil. Gu Heng couldn't see through Tongning, but she knew that Tongning had already seen through her. When it came to intelligence, it was likely that even in her next life, she wouldn't be able to surpass Tongning. She refused to believe that Tongning would be able to overcome any difficulties. Everyone was bound to have bad luck one day. I know what Qiuxing is doing isn't good for either of us. But I will do whatever it takes to protect him. After speaking, Gu Heng disappeared from Tongning's sight. Tongning did not look back as she returned to her room. From the looks of it, Gu Heng had no idea that the production was planning to replace Bai Qiuxing. Tongning wondered, what was the point of fighting over and over, only to end up empty-handed? That night, Long Jie gave Tongning a phone call to check on the situation. What happened this time? What's wrong with that old man? You are such a troublemaker. Every time something goes wrong, you end up on the hottest search rankings. Someone did it on purpose. Tongning explained helplessly as she explained the situation on set to Long Jie. As soon as Long Jie found out, she was furious. What kind of luck is this? The male lead and supporting actress are a couple, so of course they want to chase you away. Why don't you think about who will benefit the most from your departure? Long Jie sighed. But I'm already used to you encountering obstacles in everything you do. If nothing goes wrong, you wouldn't be called Tongning. What did the director say about this? They've decided to replace him, Tongning replied. Replace you? Replace Bai Qiuxing. Tongning couldn't stand Long Jie's screams and giggled. That's good. Long Jie let out a sigh of relief. If I wasn't preparing for pregnancy, I would follow you around every day. What kind of assistant did boss find for you? He doesn't seem to be taking his work seriously. Be a good girl and prepare for pregnancy. Don't worry about me. Since there's no problem, of course I'm not worried. It's just that the rumors about you and boss are spreading like wildfire. They keep saying that you guys are going to divorce. I'm getting angry. Tongning understood that Long Jie truly cared about her, so she allowed her to nag for quite some time before hanging up the phone. Finally, Mo Ting called. The first thing he asked was, "Who were you on the phone with for so long? I couldn't get in." "What do you think?" Tongning asked in a coquettish tone. "Long man, I'm just teasing you." The incident was originally suppressed, but Bai Qiuxing stepped out and said a few words, causing the situation to escalate. "I'm mentally prepared. Hubby, if it wasn't for the fact that Bai Qiuxing's heart isn't in the right place, I actually have high hopes for his relationship with Gu Heng. Gu Heng is willing to give up everything for Bai Qiuxing. I can sense the helplessness in her heart. I'm not optimistic about anything. I just want to kill the person who bullied you." Mo Ting replied in seriousness. "Weiyan knows how to handle this matter. You don't need to make an appearance. Hai Rui will handle the PR. If Bai Qiuxing wanted to cause a scene, then let him." Faced with the media's interview, Bai Qiuxing straightforwardly explained that he wasn't sure why Elder He kept targeting Tongning. Plus, Tongning only followed him because she wanted him to act with her. As for everything else, he had no idea. His explanation further hinted that Old He had slept with Tongning. The entertainment industry was a place where people made groundless accusations. Bai Qiuxing simply said a few words, but the media was already able to make a lot of assumptions. Tongning has been found to have slept with Tongning. Fellow actors prove Tongning has slept with Tongning. What will happen to Mo Tang's relationship? Rumor has it that Mo Tang's marriage changed. Mo Tang hasn't stepped out of his office since. Faced with the increasing pressure from the media, Hai Rui no longer tried to suppress them. Instead, they directly warned Bai Qiuxing. "As an actor, you must first learn to be an honest person." This was Hai Rui hinting that Bai Qiuxing was lying. In an instant, it was hard for the public to differentiate between the truth and lies. However, Mo Ting and Elder Mo were not in a rush. Bai Qiuxing's current actions were not enough for the production to replace him. So they waited to see what other tricks Bai Qiuxing had up his sleeve. After all, face-slapping incidents like this were only enjoyable when they reached the climax. Logically speaking, with the crew in a mess, Weiyan should be worried about PR. After all, sleeping with someone was harmful to the film. But Weiyan remained calm and claimed to be sick. He told his assistant director to film some unimportant scenes to give everyone some time to recover. In reality, he had already gone to the US to meet with the actor that Mo Ting had found. As soon as the actor heard that Weiyan was involved in the film and was willing to open up the Asian market, they arranged to meet in person. Weiyan thought to himself, this time, he had profited from his misfortune. But there were some people that were a little worse off. How dare they spread news about Elder Mo translator? Uni editor. Uni, what kind of expression would Bai Qiuxing have when Elder Mo revealed his identity? Just thinking about it made her feel good. Because of Mo Ting's calmness, Tongning's mood was not affected in the slightest. She continued to take care of Elder Mo and learn from him. Song Yenshu tried to persuade Tongning to avoid arousing suspicion, but Tongning shook her head. He's innocent to begin with. If I keep hiding, it will only make things worse. Plus, what's there to be afraid of? She had the entire production and Mo Ting backing her up. If Bai Qiuxing was allowed to get his way, not only Mo Ting, even Weiyan would feel humiliated. Okay, your fans have also expressed their stance. They will believe whatever you say. Tongning smiled and nodded. Tongning smiled and nodded her head. It seemed her fans had developed a diamond heart. They knew that unless she personally admitted to something, they wouldn't believe it easily. Tell them to calm down. The truth will eventually come out. Okay. Seeing Tongning's confidence, Song Yenshu no longer had any reason to worry. So, she simply relayed Tongning's message to her fans. As soon as the fans heard about Tongning's message, they were relieved. Although she was constantly arguing with people, the pride and joy that Tongning brought to them was multiplied. They all knew how good Tongning was. So even if the public were to spread it all over the place, they still wouldn't believe it. Who told their idol to take an unusual path? They sat back and waited for Bai Qiuxing to be taught a lesson. Of course, Bai Qiuxing didn't have such a simple trick up his sleeve. To be able to achieve such a status in the entertainment industry, he naturally had his own strengths. Chapter 437. At the same time that Tang Ning was rumored to have slept with Mo Ting, her phone number was also leaked. An unscrupulous reporter received the news and gave Tang Ning a phone call. "Are you Tang Ning? Really? That's impossible, right?" At first, Tang Ning was able to put up a good fight. But as the media confirmed that the number was hers, her phone rang nonstop for the entire day. Ningjia, the man with the surname Bai, is getting more and more out of hand. Song Yenshu no longer wanted to call Bai Qiuxing by his full name. She simply called him by his surname. Originally, she didn't have any feelings for him, but now, she was extremely angry. Tang Ning looked at her phone with a gloomy expression. Not long after, Mo Ting arrived at the hotel. At this time, the media were already calling Tang Ning. Mo Ting looked at it, and picked it up. "Is Tang Ning? Tell me, is there such a thing as unspoken rules? Which company are you from?" Mo Ting asked without hesitation. "I am from Huaming Media Company, Limited." The person on the other end of the phone did not seem to realize who was on the other end of the phone. He simply thought it was one of Tang Ning's staff that wanted to share some big news with him. But to his surprise, Mo Ting did not even bat an eye as he directly said, Miss Mississippi, wait for the door to close." After speaking, he hung up the phone and gestured for Song Yenshu to leave. "I'm fine." Tang Ning looked at Mo Ting and held onto his warm hand. "I know you guys have a plan. So all I need to do is wait. I've asked Luce to change your phone number." After speaking, Mo Ting knew Tang Ning was being sentimental, so he added, "Keep this number for now. Next time, if the media doesn't bother you, you can use it again." Tang Ning understood that Mo Ting understood her, so she simply smiled and did not respond. "Plus, if you want to do something, go ahead and do it. Don't worry about others. Wei Yan's plan won't affect you." Mo Ting encouraged Tang Ning. As long as Tang Ning was happy, he was willing to break any taboos and ignore any plans. As long as Tang Ning could vent her anger. "Okay, I understand," Tang Ning nodded, acknowledging Mo Ting's support. Mo Ting's heart ached as he pulled Tang Ning into his embrace and gently stroked her hair. "That's why I need to put you on the highest pedestal. Only then will others be left in the dust and no longer have any ideas about you." Tang Ning understood Mo Ting's intentions, so she hugged him even tighter. "I only need to know that we are an invincible husband and wife at all times." "Of course." After checking on Tang Ning, Mo Ting left the hotel and turned to Luce. "Huaming Media Company, Limited tomorrow. I want to see the news of their closure. Also, where does the old man live? I'll take you there." Luce immediately led the way. Mo Ting followed Luce into Elder Mo's courtyard with a dark and handsome face. At this moment, Elder Mo was leisurely standing under the cage playing with the birds. As soon as he saw Mo Ting, he quickly hid. "Stop hiding. From the moment you stepped out of the airport, I knew you were back. Come on out." Elder Mo furrowed his brows and had no choice but to step out and look at his grandson. Sure enough, the waves in front pushed the waves behind. This stinking brat actually knew on the day he returned. It seemed like his every move was also being watched by his precious grandson. "Since you've endured for so long, why don't you continue to endure?" Elder Mo asked as he waved his fan. Seeing Mo Ting did not respond, he thought of an answer. "My heart aches for my wife. How much longer are you going to test her?" Mo Ting was getting impatient. He had already given the old man so much time, yet he still had a problem with Tang Ning? What's the rush? Elder Mo calmly sat down beside the stone table. "When the time is right, I will let her know." The grandfather and grandson looked at each other. Mo Ting, of course, knew what Elder Mo was talking about. Since Bai Qiuxing wanted to blow up the matter and drag the entire production down with him, Mo Ting was not going to hold back. Mo Ting scoffed and prepared to leave. But at this time, Elder Mo suddenly lifted his eyes and said, "That brat hasn't passed my final test yet. But her performance so far shows that she has a good eye." Mo Ting turned around and glared at Elder Mo as a warning. If the old man continued to play any tricks, he was going to step in and help him. After Tongning's phone number was revealed, the public began to pay attention to it. As Bai Qiuxing watched Wei Yan return to the set, he began to hint at something. "Director Wei, is there any point in continuing to film like this?" Wei Yan looked at Bai Qiuxing with a smile. "It's my fault for not being strict with the crew. That's why there's a scandal and a phone number being revealed. It's all on me. Director Wei, we both know what's going on. Don't beat around the bush with me." Bai Qiuxing wanted to make sure the incident was real and drag Wei Yan into the mire. This time, Wei Yan's gaze was sharp. In the end, he smiled. "Let's wait for another 2 days. In another 2 days, there will be news. When that time comes, there will be a big announcement. I will definitely help you." Bai Qiuxing thought Wei Yan was determined to replace Tongning. So he decided to give the production another dose of medicine. Wei Yan understood Bai Qiuxing's expression. As soon as Bai Qiuxing left, he immediately went to look for Elder Mo. From the looks of it, Bai Qiuxing is going to make a big move. That will be the perfect time to deal with him. Elder Mo hinted Wei Yan. After all, Bai Qiuxing was on set with Wei Yan, so it was easy for Wei Yan to keep track of his movements. Wei Yan nodded his head. His mind was like a mirror. He already knew what to do next. As long as Bai Qiuxing made his next move, he would be able to close the net. Plus, the overseas actor had already been confirmed. He would arrive in Beijing in 3 days at the latest. In other words, there was plenty of time. I really don't want to reveal my identity. I haven't had enough fun yet. In that case, even if you don't reveal it, I can still deal with the jerk. Wei Yan laughed. No, the rascal just gave me a warning. If I play any more tricks, I may be slapped to death on the beach. I better take it easy, Elder Mo grumbled. No matter what, Mo Ting was currently in charge of Hai Rui. So he still had to take into consideration Mo Ting's identity and give him some face. Is Elder Mo afraid of President Mo? A new ruler brings his own subordinates. Right now, it's his world. All I care about is eating, drinking and having fun. It's best if I don't get rebuffed. Otherwise, I'll have to face the consequences. That wouldn't be worth it. Elder Mo calculated carefully. Chapter 438. Everyone was anticipating Bai Qiuxing's final move. But for the next 2 days he did not make a move. Although he still expressed his dissatisfaction towards the production, he did not take a hard stance. Because of Hai Rui's PR, the production returned to normal. Although Tongning was harassed to a certain extent, after changing her phone number, everything returned to normal. This was all thanks to Mo Ting's strength. Bai Qiuxing also understood that if he didn't make a move soon, this incident would soon be covered up by Hai Rui. That day, Tongning was filming at night. While she was waiting for her scenes to start, someone from the production team came to visit. The person claimed to be Bai Qiuxing's friend and asked where he was. Tongning casually pointed to a direction and told the person that Bai Qiuxing was currently filming an action scene. The person nodded his head gratefully and quickly disappeared from Tongning's sight. Tongning had a feeling something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. After Song Yenshu returned to her side, Tongning whispered something into her ear, and Song Yenshu cautiously left. Although Tongning couldn't guess, she had a feeling that someone would come to visit at a time like this. Of course, she couldn't directly grab the person and interrogate them, so she had to be careful. Otherwise, she would be making a mountain out of a molehill. However, because of a simple conversation with a stranger, the landmine that Bai Qiuxing had planted a long time ago was triggered. 1 a.m. A huge piece of news once again exploded in the entertainment industry. Actor Bai Qiuxing had been attacked and was currently lying unconscious in the hospital. As soon as the crew of The Disappeared received news, Wei Yan immediately rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Bai Qiuxing's agency immediately blocked the news. What's going on? By the time Wei Yan arrived at the hospital, Bai Qiuxing's manager was sitting on a bench covered in blood. From the looks of it, he had indeed been through a tough fight. Director Wei, when I took Qiuxing home that night, someone ambushed him. Originally, with Qiuxing's skills he would have been able to escape. But because he was trying to protect me, he was stabbed and sent to the emergency room. This is the phone that the assailant threw away. Tungning's phone number is stored inside. The manager handed the bloodied phone to Wei, and Wei furrowed his brows and immediately realized what was going on. It turned out, Bai Qiuxing's so-called help was actually a self-scripted and self-directed act. He didn't hesitate to get himself injured. It could be seen how scheming he was. A car accident wouldn't scare him. I will get to the bottom of this matter, Wei said to Bai Qiuxing's manager. But before that, don't tell the media. After all, it won't do Qiuxing any good. I understand, Director Wei. I feel wronged on behalf of Qiuxing. We merely spoke the truth, but we didn't want to be attacked. Does the Mo family have the final say in the entertainment industry? Is there no law? Wei suppressed his disgust towards Bai Qiuxing and pretended to pat his manager on the shoulder. Don't worry, I will get justice for him. I hope that's the case. Otherwise, our agency will not let Hai Rui off. After comforting Bai Qiuxing's manager, Wei instructed the assistant director and 2 members of the production crew to watch over Bai Qiuxing's every move. Afterwards, Wei contacted Mo Ting and told him that Bai Qiuxing was about to slander Tongning, so he could be mentally prepared. He also told Mo Ting about Bai Qiuxing's plan to frame Mo Ting. If he really dares to harm himself and put on an act, then I will respect him for being a man. Elder Mo sneered as he waved his fan. Elder Mo waved his fan and scoffed. I never expected Bai Qiuxing to be so unscrupulous. Since he wants to frame Tongning, he can't simply rely on the phone number. That can't be used as evidence. He must have other evidence. Last night, Tongning gave directions to a strange man. That man claimed to be a good friend of Bai Qiuxing and came to visit on set. At that time, Tongning asked her assistant to follow the man and take a photo. I've already asked Lu Che to investigate further. If this man really has something to do with Tongning, then finding him would be equivalent to finding Bai Qiuxing's lifeline, Mo Ting said with a hint of danger. Tongning has always been cautious. I'm not surprised that she noticed. Wei nodded his head in agreement. Now the key point lies with this man. Bai Qiuxing is indeed talented, but he is too calculative. Looking at the entire situation now, I can't help but feel a chill down my spine. Luckily, Tongning is careful with every step. Otherwise, she would have been killed by this man without even knowing it. It's all my fault for not being able to see through him. Wei looked at the 2 men and sighed guiltily. Is Tongning okay? She's asleep. She's already used to it, Mo Ting laughed. If he hadn't coaxed his wife to sleep, he wouldn't have come out today. That's good. I was worried that she would be affected by something. But from the looks of it, Tongning must have prepared herself last night. I can't help but admire her calmness. Wei let out a long sigh. It was rare to see an actress like Tongning, or rather a woman. On the surface, she appeared gentle and weak, but the things she did were always amazing. She was serious, hardworking, and had no intention of harming others. Was this the reason why Mo Ting doted on her? No matter what, we will definitely find out tomorrow. Mo Ting was 100% confident in Lu Che's ability to track down information. I'm sure Bai Qiuxing won't be sitting around doing nothing. Let's just wait and see. There will be a good show tomorrow. Elder Mo sat to one side and listened to the conversation between the 2 men. To be honest, all the scheming and deceit between the 2 men was irritating to his ears. What he hated the most was the scheming in the entertainment industry. This was the reason why he had abandoned his responsibilities early on. Instead, he spent all his time thinking about framing others. If he didn't train himself, how could his acting improve? How could he possibly win an award? Because of this, he liked Tongning's coldness from the bottom of his heart. She was indeed not a kind person, but she never took the initiative to harm others. This was proof that she had a bottom line. If Tongning could do something that he liked, it would be perfect. Soon, the night passed and dawn arrived. However, news of Bai Qiuxing's injury spread like wildfire. Needless to say, Bai Qiuxing was definitely going to spread the news. He wanted everyone to see his wound, and the person that caused it was Tongning. Although Bai Qiuxing's agency did not explicitly say that Tongning had anything to do with the incident, they still revealed that they had found Tongning's phone number on the culprit's phone. This was equivalent to telling everyone that Tongning was the mastermind. We will report this incident to the police and let them investigate further. I'm sure we will have an answer very soon. Thank you for your concern. As soon as Qiuxing wakes up, we will let everyone know about his condition. Don't worry. Chapter 439. Bai Qiuxing was determined to push Tongning into the heart of the matter. So, as soon as he woke up, he immediately went to see the police and reporters. He appeared to be seriously injured. His head was wrapped in a thick bandage and his face was pale and skinny. His eyes were bloodshot. The culprit wanted to kill me. This time, I hope the police can find out the truth and give me justice. Punish the culprit. Okay, Qiuxing's condition isn't too good, so he won't be accepting any interviews today. As for the details of the attack, he will hold a press conference when his body is able to handle it. When the time comes, he will reveal everything to the public. I hope the media can understand his current condition. Bai Qiuxing's manager chased the media out of the room, leaving only the police officers behind to record his statement. Not long after, the police left and immediately arrived at Hai Rui to summon Tongning for questioning. As soon as this news was released, the entire entertainment industry was in an uproar. Was Tongning really the culprit behind Bai Qiuxing's attack? If not, why did the police directly summon Tongning instead of looking for someone else? To avoid causing a commotion, the police did not make their move during the day. Of course, the police had already shown their identification, so Tongning had no choice but to cooperate. Mo Ting arranged a meeting room for the police to use, and Tongning immediately rushed over from her home. Of course, Mo Ting wasn't someone to be trifled with. There were already 3 lawyers following Tongning into the meeting room. Everything will be fine. Relax. Mo Ting comforted as he patted Tongning on the shoulder. I know. Tongning nodded her head. But she still had to follow legal procedures. This was something that no one could escape from. Mo Ting gently stroked Tongning's hair, as he gestured for her to bring the lawyers into the meeting room. After she sat down, the police began to ask their questions. Miss Tang, let me show you a video first. It was recorded on set, the police officer said as he pulled out his phone and placed it in front of Tongning. As soon as Tongning glanced at the video, she smiled. This man claimed to be Bai Qiuxing's friend, and asked me for directions. So, I told him that Bai Qiuxing was filming a fight scene and told him which set he was on. The police officer took back the video and continued to ask, in that case, how do you explain the fact that the culprit that attacked Bai Qiuxing had your phone number on his phone? Mr. Policeman, how do you want me to answer this question? Tongning asked calmly. My phone number has been leaked and everyone knows about it. Why are you asking me how he managed to get my number? As it turns out, the person that asked you for directions was the same person that attacked Bai Qiuxing. We are currently searching for their whereabouts. Once these people are captured, the truth will come to light. The police obviously knew they wouldn't get an answer from Tongning, because they didn't have enough evidence. Although Tongning was the biggest suspect, they couldn't do anything to her. We will not tolerate any criminal activity. The police officer's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Tongning replied in a serious tone. I hope you remember what you said today. Let's go. After the interrogation, the police got up to leave. However, just as he took a step forward, he turned around again. Now that things have gotten out of hand, you should be in more trouble. Be careful. I naturally have a way to prove my innocence. Thank you for your concern. Tongning smiled elegantly. The 2 police officers were stunned for a moment before they walked out of Hai Rui. However, Tongning's expression was no longer as relaxed and natural as before. Back when she was dealing with Yu Shanshan, it was a self-scripted and self-directed incident. At that time, she could remain silent and stay out of it. But now, Bai Qiuxing's act had completely dragged her into a whirlpool of emotions that she couldn't pull herself out of. Afterwards, Mo Ting entered the meeting room and held onto Tongning's hands tightly. Lu Che has already received a lead. He will definitely find Bai Qiuxing before the police. Why aren't you cooperating with the police? I need to personally obtain evidence of your innocence before I hand it over to the police. He was used to being in control. Since Bai Qiuxing was holding a press conference to announce the incident, he naturally had to prepare a good show for him. Trust in Luce. Nothing will go wrong. Tongning nodded her head. Of course, I know you won't let me be wrongly accused. In fact, I'm more worried about you. I don't care too much about what the public says because I know the truth will eventually come out. Your heart is already strong enough. Mo Ting hugged her. His eyes were filled with heartache and relief. Afterwards, the couple returned to his office. While Mo Ting handled his work, Tongning accompanied him by his side. Actually, for Tongning, no difficulty could overwhelm her, as long as the man beside her continued to love her. In order to retaliate against Bai Qiuxing, not only did she need to find the key man, she also needed to find out why Bai Qiuxing did what he did. That was to prove his relationship with Gu Heng. Tongning still did not know Elder Mo's identity, so she had no idea that there was a trap within a trap within a trap within a trap that Wei Yan had planned. The public did not have much information about Gu Heng and Bai Qiuxing, so very few people knew about their relationship. Thinking of this, Tongning's eyes darkened. She then said to Mo Ting, I want to ask Bai Qindong to help me put on a show. I need evidence to prove Bai Qiuxing and Gu Heng's relationship. What do you want to do? Mo Ting smiled. This method may work. Tongning looked at Mo Ting. Perhaps it was a family trait, but Bai Qindong's ability to imitate was also outstanding. So Mo Ting found a lot of audio recordings of Bai Qiuxing and handed them to Bai Qindong for him to imitate. Of course, although Bai Qindong didn't want to get involved in a matter like this, he couldn't do anything about the fact that his own family was being bullied. With the addition of Han Xiner's encouragement, Bai Qindong spent some time imitating Bai Qiuxing's voice until it was 80 to 90% similar before he picked up his phone and gave Gu Heng a phone call. At first, Gu Heng did not pick up, but after Bai Qindong sent her a message, she finally picked up. I'm Gu Heng. It's me. Bai Qindong imitated Bai Qiuxing perfectly. Gu Hao heaved a sigh of relief when she heard a familiar voice. She grumbled. Why are you calling me at this time? Didn't we agree not to contact each other for the time being? There are some things that I need to see you about. We can't go home. We can only go outside. Let's go to our usual haunts. All right, wait for me. Don't call me. I don't want to alert the media. Okay. Gu Heng was extremely obedient. Bai Qindong hung up the phone and threw it to one side. He then looked at Han Xiner and Tongning proudly, like he was telling them not to bother him with small matters like this again. It was a waste of time. Han Xiner pretended to bite him while Tongning looked out the window gloomily. She could only hope that the person following Gu Heng would find something. Chapter 440. It wasn't that Gu Heng wasn't prepared. But during this period of time, she had been extremely nervous because of Bai Qiuxing. So she couldn't tell whether Bai Qiuxing was telling the truth or lying. So he simply told her after the incident. After a few more days, things will settle down. When that time comes, you will be the female lead. Now that things had gotten to this point, Gu Heng no longer had any feelings for the female lead. She was afraid that Bai Qiuxing would be exposed. But Bai Qiuxing refused to tell her anything. He simply told her to wait, and told her to never admit to her relationship with him. Because Gu Heng didn't know the truth, she took the bait when Bai Qindong lied to her. She had no idea what Bai Qiuxing was up to. Gu Heng left home late at night without her assistant. She drove all by herself to the place where she was supposed to meet Bai Qiuxing. It was an underground cafe. But when she arrived, Bai Qiuxing was nowhere to be seen. In the end, she received a phone call from Bai Qindong. I've been discovered by my manager. I can't leave right now. Go home first. I'll see you later. Gu Heng trusted this voice without a doubt. So she hurried home without even noticing that someone was following behind her. She was in too much of a panic. Those that were sent out by Mo Ting were definitely reliable people. So it didn't take long before he managed to gather a lot of information from the cafe. On top of that, he also managed to get his hands on Gu Heng and Bai Qiuxing's hotel records. He also managed to collect photos taken by the hotel staff that saw them. The hotel was indeed secretive, and they did a good job of keeping it a secret. But in the end, they couldn't resist a bribe. After all, the hotel manager had no idea who leaked the photos. At the same time, Wuxia also received news. Although the culprit had escaped once again, he had found an important lead, and was confident that he would be able to catch the culprit within 2 days. With evidence in hand, Tongning let out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Han Xiner looked at her in admiration. Ningjia is indeed smart. Why don't you say that my acting is good? Bei Chendong scoffed as he turned to look at Han Xiner. Now, I can only hope that Lu Che will do his best. I hope he doesn't make any mistakes. Han Xiner placed her palms together and bowed sincerely to the sky. Bei Chendong had no choice but to stand up and drag Han Xiner out. Since there's nothing else for me to do, I'm going to leave. I have a lot of flowers and plants at home, so I can't be gone for too long. This was Han Xiner's latest method to cure Bei Chendong's laziness. She had 5 cats, 5 dogs, 5 parrots, 5 turtles and a bunch of flowers and plants at home. However, Bei Chendong actually fell for her tricks. Apart from filming, he spent all his time at home cultivating. Don't worry, nothing will happen. After all, Weian was also making preparations. The old man was still waiting to deal Bai Qiuxing a fatal blow. Actually, it wasn't difficult to sort out the entire incident. Even though Bai Qiuxing controlled the public opinion, they had more evidence in their hands. Perhaps, Bai Qiuxing was afraid that the longer the investigation dragged on, the more likely Tongning would find evidence to prove her innocence. So, on the 3rd morning after waking up, he announced that he would be holding a press conference. As the incident this time was extremely bad and concerned Tongning and Hai Rui's reputation, the media practically turned out in full force. They all turned up at the press conference prepared by Bai Qiuxing's agency, Hall 5 of a certain 5-star hotel. As for Bai Qiuxing, he didn't need to prepare much. All he had to do was sit in his wheelchair and place it on the steps. This scene was enough for the reporters to come up with different headlines. Bai Qiuxing's manager held onto the microphone and thanked the media. He then said in a serious tone, "Regarding the attack on Qiuxing, when we found out the truth, we were heartbroken. Of course, the police are still investigating, so I can't jump to conclusions. So, I'll let Qiuxing describe his experience in detail." After speaking, the manager handed the microphone to the wheelchair-bound Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing was wearing a hospital gown, and his head was wrapped in bandages. His head was initially lowered, but after receiving the microphone, he finally lifted his head and faced the countless cameras and flashes. "I feel a little strange. I don't even know what I did wrong to receive such a painful attack. That night, my manager sent me home to get some rest. But a group of men were waiting outside my house with axes, metal bars and other tools. I used to be a stunt double, so I'm quite skilled. But they actually attacked my manager. I had no choice but to take the hit for my manager. Afterwards, I lost consciousness. However, my manager managed to grab hold of the man's phone while they were fighting. The police haven't announced their conclusion yet, so I can't say for sure. But Tongning's phone number is in the man's phone. And according to the police's investigation, the man that attacked me also had a conversation with Tongning. I really don't want to. I don't want to associate such a vicious thing with a woman, but who's going to sympathize with my experience?" After speaking, Bai Qiuxing paused for a moment, clearly choking on his emotions. His manager quickly tried to calm him down before adding, "I hope the police's conclusion has nothing to do with Tongning. Otherwise, I will definitely take legal action and fight Hai Rui to the end." As the big boss of the entertainment industry, Hai Rui has an unshakable position in the industry. If this incident was really caused by Tongning, then President Mo, I hope you can get Tongning to come out and give me a proper apology. As an outsider, it's not appropriate for me to get involved in your marriage. But I simply expressed my opinion and did not offend you in any way. If Tongning is angry because of my previous comments, I would like to apologize. But at the same time, I am also waiting for the police's final conclusion. Bai Qiuxing first tried to defend himself. Then, he explained what had happened and finally brought up the matter to Hai Rui's reputation. At the same time, he pointed out Tongning's motive, because he said a few things that he shouldn't have. He hinted at Tang Ning's ruthlessness and Mo Ting's connivance and protection. The media already knew about the entire incident, but now, they had received confirmation. Bai Qiuxing's every step of the way had already convinced the public to stand on his side. Because his current appearance made him look like a victim. Otherwise, why would the wheelchair be in such a pitiful state and the bandages be covered in blood? He was obviously trying to gain the sympathy of the public. Chapter 441. Now that the incident has gotten so big, Hai Rui can't possibly protect Tang Ning anymore, right? If they were to protect her, it would be too unreasonable. Just because they have power and influence, they can step all over others. This time they've involved unspoken rules and paid a hitman to hit someone. Let's see what Tang Ning has to say. I have to hand it to Tang Ning. No matter where she goes, she won't be able to stop her methods. If we kick Tang Ning out of the industry, I'm sure no one will object, right? Exactly. Tang Ning, get out. Get out. Inside the banquet hall, all sorts of discussions could be heard. Most of the reporters were filled with anger towards Tang Ning as they promised to get justice for Bai Qiuxing. Justice? Bai Qiuxing looked at the crowd's reaction and hid the anger in his eyes. When no one was looking, the corners of his lips curved upwards. There was no truth to this incident. The truth was that Tang Ning paid a hitman to hit someone. Faced with the flashing cameras, Bai Qiuxing's manager and Bai Qiuxing looked at each other with a tacit understanding. However, just as everyone was about to head back to work on their big news, the door to Ballroom 5 suddenly swung open. Everyone turned their heads and saw Tang Ning appear at the entrance of the banquet hall. She was wearing a light blue rippling dress. Oh God, Tang Ning's here. How dare Tang Ning show up here? Tang Ning. All of a sudden, the reporters swarmed over and pushed the topic in front of Tang Ning, completely surrounding her. Tang Ning, are you here to clarify things? Tang Ning, say a few words. Tang Ning. Tang Ning smiled confidently at the reporters and said, You've all been listening to Bai Qiuxing for quite some time. Shouldn't you all hear what I have to say? As soon as the media heard Tang Ning's words, they immediately understood her intentions and became even more excited. They knew Tang Ning was going to make this incident full of twists and turns, so the resulting news would be even more exciting. Reporters, please take a seat. Although this is Bai Qiuxing's press conference, since it involves me, then I have a reason to stand out and say a few words. I can't just remain silent and do nothing, right? In order to get more exciting news, the reporters all returned to their seats, and they already had the attitude of watching a good show. Bai Qiuxing and his manager looked at each other again, reminding each other to act according to the situation. After all, Tang Ning had never been easy to deal with. Tang Ning walked to the front of the stage with a slight smile on her face. She first bowed to everyone before lifting her head to face the media. I actually have a few questions I want to ask Mr. Bai Qiuxing. Tang Ning, what other tricks do you have up your sleeve? Haven't you harmed me enough? Bai Qiuxing angrily berated. You said that I hired a hitman because of two things. First, my name is in the hitman's phone, and second, I've spoken to him before. Now let me tell you the truth. First, my phone number has been leaked. I think everyone here should have my number in their phones, right? Quite a few of them even fought it before. As soon as everyone heard Tang Ning's words, their expressions turned a little awkward, especially those that had harassed Tang Ning multiple times. Second, the man that day simply asked me for directions. He said he was your friend and was visiting you. I simply gave him directions. How did I become someone that hired a hitman to hurt you? Who do you think will believe a story that you made up? Bai Qiuxing asked as he lifted his chin. However, Tang Ning was not in a rush. She continued, In that case, what evidence do you have to prove that Bai Qiuxing didn't make this up? Is it simply because he was injured? After hearing this, the reporters below the stage suddenly sneered. According to what you're saying, Bai Qiuxing wrote and directed this show himself? Would someone hire someone to beat themselves up? Bai Qiuxing has no evidence either, so he's just going around spouting nonsense, Tang Ning calmly said as she controlled the situation. He has no feud with you. Why would he try to frame you? If you want to push the blame away, You should at least find a better excuse. No feud? Tongning looked down at the crowd and repeated these words. She then scoffed. Who told you that I have no feud with him? In that case, what feud do you have with him? Tell us. The reporters yelled at Tongning. Tongning calmed herself down and lifted her head. Firstly, not too long ago we were filming a car racing scene, but my car was tampered with. That day, if I hadn't discovered it early, perhaps I would be lying in the hospital right now. Everyone on set can testify to that. Secondly, Lao He appeared in the crew. He didn't like my style, so I took care of the old man's life with the attitude of learning. I wanted to ask for his cooperation, but I was used by some people. They said that I was sleeping with an investor and started rumors about my marriage. Afterwards, my phone number was leaked. Afterwards, I mysteriously became a criminal that hired a hitman to hurt someone. From start to finish, I was the one that was hurt the most. How did Bai Qiuxing become the one to blame? Tongning asked. The reporters looked at each other. It seemed they really hadn't thought through the entire incident. You are all leaders in the media industry, so I'm sure you can easily understand that if I really wanted to do something, Hai Rui's background alone would be enough to provide me with a safe haven. Why would I put myself in such a difficult position? I, Tongning, already have Mo Ting. Why would I need to cheat on you? When have I, Tongning, ever resorted to such underhanded methods to deal with others? Are you trying to say that Bai Qiuxing is slandering you? But there's no need for him to do so. The reporters couldn't understand why Bai Qiuxing and Tongning would take such a risk if there was no feud between them. Tongning, don't you think your story is a little too ridiculous? At this moment, Bai Qiuxing also agreed with the reporter. He was confident that the public opinion was on his side, so he didn't need to worry about Tongning overturning their conclusions. Don't you know very well whether I'm making up a story or not? Tongning laughed in ridicule. Her eyes finally contained a hint of anger. I was originally giving you a chance. Hurry up and tell us. Don't keep us in suspense. One of the reporters yelled anxiously from below the stage. Actually, the reason why Bai Qiuxing slandered me is simple. It's because he and Gu Heng are lovers. What does it mean if the male lead and the supporting actress are lovers? It means if I withdraw from the cast, the supporting actress will become the female lead. Chapter 442. As soon as Tongning's words left her mouth, the reporters below the stage were in an uproar. Some looked at Tongning in disdain, while others looked like they had just realized something. The entire incident was now connected. The motive and goal were all there. On the other hand, according to Tongning's EQ and IQ, it was indeed difficult for her to hire a hitman to beat someone up. This was also the point that many reporters had been struggling with. Tongning was a part of Hai Rui. Did she need to spend so much effort to teach someone a lesson? Sensing that the reporters were starting to waver, Bai Qiuxing immediately pointed to Tongning and yelled, I've never seen a woman as shameless as you. In order to escape punishment, you would drag an innocent person into the mess. You said Gu Heng and I were a couple. Who took a photo of us? Who has any evidence? Gu Heng and I are just acquaintances. Don't slander me here. You'd better admit your crimes as soon as possible. Just acquaintances? Are you sure? Tongning asked as she looked at Bai Qiuxing. Her eyes were filled with confidence and deep meaning. Bai Qiuxing's heart skipped a beat. However, things had already gotten to this point and he had no way out. If you have evidence, then show it to me. Tongning stared at him for 3 seconds before she turned to look at the reporters below the stage. As long as you have the intention, you can find evidence everywhere. But I think it's best if we get Gu Heng to speak to you in person. Where's Gu Heng? Is Gu Heng here? Bai Qiuxing sneered at Tongning. He felt she was usually smart, but even if Gu Heng was here, she wouldn't be on her side. Was there something wrong with her brain? Tongning also looked at Bai Qiuxing with a smile. But her smile seemed dangerous and provocative. The media stretched their necks and looked towards the entrance of the banquet hall. They waited for about 10 seconds, but Gu Heng was nowhere to be seen. In the end, the reporters couldn't take it anymore and asked, Stop keeping us in suspense. Show us all the evidence you have. That's right, Tongning, stop keeping us in suspense. Hurry and tell Gu Heng to come out. Seeing that the reporters were getting anxious, Tongning finally looked towards the entrance of the hall. Not long after, the door to Hall 5 was flung open, and Gu Heng wasn't the only one who walked in. Wei and the assistant director and producer were also there. Gu Heng never imagined that she would fall for Wei An's trap. She thought he wanted to see her because of the replacement. Who would have thought? He directly brought her to Bai Qiuxing's press conference. This time, the reporters were shocked again. What kind of internecine war was going on with the cast of The Lost Relative? This was clearly more exciting than the content in the movies. The male protagonist accused the female protagonist of hiring a hitman to hurt him. The female protagonist accused the male protagonist and the supporting actress of setting up a trap to frame her. What was the truth? At this moment, as the number of people at the scene increased, the story behind it seemed to become even more confusing. Gu Heng is here. Gu Heng, tell Bai Qiuxing what Tongning said about you and Bai Qiuxing being lovers, but Bai Qiuxing immediately denied it. As the person involved, how do you see this problem? Are you and Bai Qiuxing lovers or not? Gu Heng's hand, which was originally holding on to Wei An's, suddenly dropped to her side. She had dodged left and right, but she still couldn't escape the questioning. Gu Heng looked at Tongning and then back at Bai Qiuxing. One was calm, while the other had hidden intentions. But she had already said that she would protect Bai Qiuxing at all costs. So, after a brief mental battle, Gu Heng lifted her head and replied firmly, "Of course not. How could we possibly be lovers? Bai Qiuxing and I are just acquaintances." "Tongning, I've never offended you. Don't be so ruthless. Plus, everyone knows that you hired a hitman to hurt someone. Why are you trying to divert the public's attention and divert the blame? Bai Qiuxing and I are innocent. Why did you drag me into this?" Acquaintances. Even their lines were the same. Everyone received their answer. But Tongning simply smiled without a trace of panic. In fact, this made Gu Heng feel pressured. Even the person involved has denied it. Let's wait and see what Tongning has to say. Just as the reporters were about to lose control, Wei An suddenly waved to everyone and stepped onto the stage. "I would like to take this opportunity to express my stance on this matter. Replacing Tongning is a given. My film will not allow such an ambitious person to appear." As soon as Wei An spoke, everyone was shocked. Wei An had actually made such a decision at a place like this. Was he planning to replace Tongning in public? Everyone turned to the stage and snapped furiously. Meanwhile, Bai Qiuxing looked at his manager with a deeper expression. He even looked a little proud. Hadn't he worked so hard just for this moment? "Director Wei, since you've already decided to replace Tongning, have you already found someone else?" "Director Wei, aren't you afraid of getting yourself into trouble by replacing Tongning like this?" "Does Director Wei need to be afraid? Isn't it normal to clean up the trash in society?" Bai Qiuxing said as he looked at Tongning. It was obvious he was implying that she was trash. Wei An did not say a word as he looked at the reporters below the stage, and let out a gentle laugh. He felt they were too young and pitiful. At this time, just as everyone thought Wei An was going to replace Tongning, he suddenly shrugged his shoulders and asked, "When did I say I was going to replace Tongning?" "You're not going to replace Tongning? Then who are you going to replace?" "Of course I'm going to replace him. Bai Qiuxing." After speaking, Wei An looked at Bai Qiuxing and emphasized, "As for the rest, I will leave it up to Tongning to verify it. Let me just say one thing. The car racing incident that Tongning mentioned did happen, and everyone on set knows about it." The reporters were stunned. After a few seconds, they realized they weren't hearing things. Wei An was actually talking about replacing Bai Qiuxing. Replacing Bai Qiuxing was not Tongning, it was Bai Qiuxing. Bai Qiuxing's expression immediately changed as he asked anxiously, "Director Wei, did Tongning say something to you? Or did Hai Rui bribe you?" The Lost Relative has already chosen an A-list actor. That's all I have to say. After speaking, Wei An ignored Bai Qiuxing's expression as he patted Tongning on the shoulder and left. Bai Qiuxing was the victim, yet he was being replaced. What exactly happened in between? Director Wei, Qiuxing and I are the victims, right? Isn't it hard to convince the public by doing this? Gu Heng couldn't help but speak up. Chapter 443. Are you trying to convince the public? Tongning asked in seriousness as she looked at Gu Heng. Gu Heng, I remember I warned you and gave you a chance. I know you've always been upset that I became the female lead and that you were merely a supporting character. You've always thought that I only got the role because of Mo Ting, so you've always wanted me to leave the film. Am I right? You're slandering me. Gu Heng retorted. In order to escape punishment, you slandered my and Bai Qiuxing's reputation. Do you have a conscience? Slander? Tongning repeated. She then raised an eyebrow at Gu Heng. Did you lie to yourself when you said that? Tongning, stop putting on an act. If you're so capable, then show us your evidence. Bai Qiuxing pointed at Tongning. Bai Qiuxing pointed at Tongning with a different kind of anxiousness than before. If you don't have any evidence, then don't spout nonsense and try to scare us. Evidence? Are you referring to this? Tongning pulled out a photo of the couple hugging each other from her handbag. In fact, there was more than one photo. In the photos, they were dressed in different outfits and from different angles. It was obvious they hadn't been on a date just once or twice. In fact, they had been on the same date for at least a year. Bai Qiuxing's face turned pale. What? Don't you recognize the person in the photo? Tongning showed the photo to the reporters. Is this the so-called innocence you're talking about? Don't insult the term casual acquaintance. As soon as the reporters saw this explosive news, they immediately passed it around like crazy. Even though one or two of the photos were blurry, there were still plenty that were clear. So Bai Qiuxing couldn't deny it. Perhaps you think these photos have been edited? Are you going to tell the reporters that I'm framing you? That's fine, I have other things. After speaking, Tongning pulled out their hotel records. Let's see how you're going to explain this. Oh God, they've been dating for a few years. I can't believe they've never been photographed together. They sure keep it a secret. If that's the case, then Bai Qiuxing and Gu Heng are indeed lovers. In that case, is everything Tongning said true? The reporters below the stage were in a frenzy. The amount of information they received that morning was simply too much. Originally, they thought it was a given that Tongning was going to hurt someone. But she managed to turn the situation around. It was truly thrilling and exciting. In the end, the photos and hotel records were passed to Director Wei, who directly passed them to Gu Heng. Do you want to see them? Gu Heng's face was pale, but she still took the photo and information from Wei En's hands. However, her fingers had already turned white and were trembling slightly. After all, this was something that she and Bai Qiuxing could not deny. Bai Qiuxing looked at Gu Heng and tried his best to maintain his composure. Even if Gu Heng and I are lovers, that doesn't mean you didn't hire someone to hurt me. So, you admit your relationship with Gu Heng? Tongning turned her head and raised an eyebrow at Bai Qiuxing. Seeing his silence, she nodded her head. So you agree? Everyone, please think about it. If the male lead and female lead are a pair of lovers, then as the female lead of this film, what kind of situation am I in? Above all, Gu Heng doesn't believe that I was able to secure the female lead role. This is a police film. At least 60% of the film is filled with dangerous scenes, and I have scenes with both of them. If they were to do something to me and something happened to me, who would benefit from it? Do I need to ask? Of course it would be Gu Heng. That's right. The reporters followed Tongning's explanation and slowly understood the stakes involved. On the other hand, do you think I was involved in an unspoken rule? Did you think I needed to be involved in an unspoken rule? My husband is in control of the entertainment industry. If I had accepted the filth of this industry from the start, I would have been able to get any resources I wanted. Is taking care of an old man's daily life a problem? Why can't it be a form of respect from the younger generation to the older generation? Did you think, with just a few words, you can prove that you didn't hire someone to hurt you? Bai Qiuxing once again changed the topic to his injury. He wanted to emphasize the main point and at the same time, he wanted to hide the fact that his relationship with Gu Heng had been exposed. In that case, let me ask you, Are you really not going to admit that this is a self-scripted and self-directed show? Tongning pointed out the core of the problem and asked sharply, from the broken brakes, to the spreading of the scandal, to the leaking of the phone number, and finally, to the hiring of a hitman, don't you think this is all part of a chain reaction? The reporters were shocked by Tongning's conclusion. If this was the truth, then this Bai Qiuxing was a bit too scary. Where's the evidence? You make it sound so good, but do you have any witnesses? Do you have any evidence? Bai Qiuxing was determined to deny everything. At a time like this, as long as he refused to let go of Tongning, she would still be the loser. You've already been replaced. What's the point of continuing to struggle? Tongning asked. At this time, Bai Qiuxing finally realized that he had indeed been replaced by Weiyan. In fact, he had announced it in front of everyone. I have no idea what you're talking about. Unless you can provide me with evidence, I will continue to fight with you. Tongning did not respond. At this time, Weiyan couldn't stand it any longer. He had never seen someone as shameless as Bai Qiuxing. It was enough to make one want to pull out a knife and attack him. I'm sorry, but let me interrupt. Bai Qiuxing, do you know who the person you're slandering is? Bai Qiuxing's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion. TSK, you don't even know who you're slandering. Aren't you afraid of slapping yourself in the face? That's right, Tongning was washing Old Black's clothes and cooking for him. But let me tell you, this isn't strange at all. Even if Tongning was to send him off, you wouldn't be surprised, because it was part of her job. Everyone looked at Weiyan confusedly. Why? Why was Tongning taking care of him? Even Tongning was a little confused. What did Director Weiyan mean by this? You guys don't need to look at me. I think it's best for Old Black to explain this matter himself. After speaking, Weiyan pulled out his phone and made a phone call. Afterwards, the hall once again became noisy. No one knew what Weiyan was planning to do. So what if he's an investor? Does he think he can do whatever he wants? Bai Qiuxing scoffed. He's not an investor. Weiyan chuckled as he explained. But in reality, he was simply keeping everyone in suspense. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.